We'll call the Senate Committee on Finance to order. And first on the list is the Department of Corrections. I actually have three places I'll let you sit, the two there and then the one at the end if there's a third person that you want to come up. Unless the LBA comes in and, it's their chair, so.
Thank you. We have two to present. So for the record, my name is Helen Hanks. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections. To my right is Lisa Stone, our Director of Administration. We've prepared a presentation packet for you. On the second page is our mission statement. True to our mission, we reduce recidivism by providing safe, secure, humane supervision and evidence-based rehabilitation to enhance public safety in the state of New Hampshire. And that mission statement couldn't be more profound than it needs to be today. The department was created in July of 1983 under RSA 21H3. We have those primary charges listed. I know you will read them and many of you are familiar with them. Moving to the following page, we do a comparison of the both FY24, FY25, and the governor's recommended, as well as the House approved. Significant difference in the House approved. There is a 10.60% reduction in both years associated with abolishment of staff. You'll see those differences financially in the chart below, as you had requested. And moving to the following page, you see it through other major class lines, going into detail. And furthermore, on page 5, where you see that the reductions are specifically targeted in the classes associated with personnel benefits and temporary personnel. Continuing on, I think it's important to get to the narrative of the cause and effect of these House proposed budget reductions in staff on page 6. The reductions were accomplished by abolishing 149 positions. An additional 41 sworn law enforcement positions were abolished, and the associated funding was redirected to cover overtime costs. Of the 149 positions, 16 are sworn law enforcement, 133 are civilian. A total of 98 of these positions are filled as of April 4th, 2025. These reductions include, but are not limited to, recruitment and retention of uniformed staff, public relations staff, training staff, finance staff, human resource staff, programming staff, logistics staff, investigators, medical staff, collection staff, administrative support staff, classification staff, mental health staff, client record staff. We will go into detail of those impacts across the organizational charts as I continue through the presentation. I think it's important to note that the department's civilian staff are an essential part of our workforce. In addition to their assigned job duties, the civilian staff have voluntarily taken overtime shifts that would otherwise fall to our corrections officers. And with the current vacancy rate of 41%, which is down from 54% amongst our entry-level corrections officers, we are currently relying on our law enforcement staff to work mandatory overtime shifts, and our civilian staff are assisting in alleviating some of that burden for them and helping to reduce burnout and work-life balance. We learned a lot when we used the National Guard in our institutions, and what we learned is we have some non-armed, non-direct control rooms. And at the time Governor Sununu charged, we were coming up with something more creative, and in doing so, we want to use our certified law enforcement staff out in our housing units doing the things they're trained to do and use them as the primary resource. And then when we can, allow our staff to voluntarily fill those posts that the National Guard had filled. And in addition to that, we created what's called a per diem pool of staff. And those are often retired members of our law enforcement that come on in a non-benefited, non-union, so they are at will in the purest sense. Reminding everyone we have 3 shifts, 365 days a year. So those per diem staff have come back and they may pick up 1 shift or 3 shifts in a week. But every time they pick up a shift, we don't have to force a corrections officer. And that's made a profound difference in the morale of our staff as we've continued to really move the needle forward in reducing our vacancy rate. The proposed abolishment of many of the civilian staff will shift their responsibilities to our corrections officer, which will only increase the department's reliance on overtime. For example, kitchen operations will still require the same level of staffing. Without civilian personnel to fill these roles, our security staff will be required to fill those roles. Similarly, abolishing our client records and classification positions means that our law enforcement staff will need to assume those duties. They'll have to actually learn those duties because that includes understanding the state's statutory sentencing, understanding the proper release processes, understanding spots terminals and other complicated factors that they're not currently trained in. It cannot just go away. It has to be replaced, and what we will have left are our corrections officers. Reductions in our maintenance staff, who are part of their responsibility are maintaining the literal crumbling infrastructure at the New Hampshire State Prison for Men, will necessitate hiring outside contractors who must be escorted by security staff during all the on-site work. So once again, the increasing overtime burden on the department's already overworked law enforcement staff will result with the elimination of our maintenance staff. Population and staffing correlation. The justification House Finance provided for the proposed 190 abolished positions within the Department of Corrections is that 10 years ago, DOC housed 800 more inmates with 150 fewer staff. However, this comparison lacks context. In 2014 and 2015, in that biennium, DOC had 65 authorized but unfunded positions. That included 44 law enforcement staff. In 2016 and 17, 35 of those positions were funded. And then in FY 18 and 19, the budget authorized an additional 80 positions with staggered funding. And this was all associated with the Woods et al. Versus the state associated with the New Hampshire Correctional Facility for Women. And 17 of them were unfunded for the biennium, and 30 of those positions remained unfunded as we moved through 2016 and 17. We opened the women's facility in April of 2018 and transitioned from a 33,000 square foot facility to a 101,000 square foot facility. Position counts are not dependent on the population count. Our laundry manager supervises inmate workers that do laundry. So suffice to say, eliminating the laundry supervisor does not mean that inmates will just do the laundry. It means a corrections officer will have to fill the void of that laundry supervisor and watch the inmates do the laundry. Doing the laundry is not like doing your household laundry. You're doing hundreds and thousands of people's laundry. And you're also, as the laundry supervisor, responsible for watching and monitoring contraband, making sure that the temperature of the water hits the sanitary temperature so that the clothes are properly washed. Correctional facilities create infection control issues. The laundry supervisor is more than a person watching and making sure the machines are working. Warehouse staff process orders and deliveries for our facilities. They serve in the same capacity as making sure that the inmate workers are not sticking contraband in those products and making sure that we have a proper inventory and control, and that supplies get across to our 3 prisons, 3 transitional housing units, our 1 transitional work center, our secure psychiatric unit, and any needs that exist in our district offices across the state. We're not one facility sitting here in Concord. We're across the geography of the state, and our warehouse staff make a difference in making sure that people have the things that they need to do the work that they need to do on behalf of the state. Maintenance staff maintain and repair the same size facility regardless of the population. While the facility ages and continues to have increasing number of issues, they are licensed gas fitters, they are licensed plumbers, they are licensed electricians who navigate the different aged infrastructure across the Department of Corrections. And without them, if a control panel goes down in a housing unit and a door doesn't open, that becomes a security situation, because whether an employee is stuck behind that door or an inmate stuck behind that door, we'll have to hire an outside contractor at whatever period of time to come in and relieve that door and continue to move forward and hope we don't have adverse outcomes. The same number of kitchen staff is needed to supervise the inmate work crews in the kitchen and provide instruction to comply with food safety protocols, cleanliness, and ensure proper amount of food is prepared for each meal and ensure a sufficient amount of stock is maintained inside the facility. Admissions and releases, or bookings and releases, still occur, and our classification and client records team still has to process that. In the absence of their existence, corrections officers would have to learn that process. Our collections staff has to still collect restitution for individuals in the community who owe money to victims and survivors of crime, who owe court-ordered fines. And our finance staff will still have to provide analysis and process invoices and orders for the entire department. Human resources and training staff provide resources to staff And administrative support staff at district offices are more than just a person who greets you at the door. They are a person who enters sentencing and information on behalf of that office while our probation and parole officers are out in the field doing heavy work. So they are not just a person who greets a probation and parole officer at the door. They also do spots checks and criminal records checks, and the office would not run in their absence. A probation and parole officer would have to take over those duties. Health services at all the institutions still need to operate 24/7 facilities, and when the population was at 2,700, the facilities were overcrowded, a gym was converted to a dorm, and the housing units were double bunked. Many of the positions being abolished are from the Division of Rehabilitative Services, including teachers and case managers that help aid and foster successful rehabilitation. The department has successfully lowered its recidivism rate from as high as 51.9% in 2009 to 40.2% in 2022. Well below the national average, investing in these positions that focus on reducing recidivism is physically advantageous. We have reduced the recidivism rate, which means we have approximately 200 less people. It's through the work of all of these individuals that we've had that success over the last 8+ years. Excuse me. As it lowers the long-term costs of incarceration, supervision, and repeated court involvement, in addition to the fiscal benefits of reducing recidivism, achieving successful correctional outcomes greatly improves public safety, especially considering that 95% of individuals who are incarcerated will eventually be returned to the New Hampshire community. The 41 uniform positions that are also being abolished and their funding redirected to overtime. Of the 41 positions, 2 are currently filled, and the department relies on a unique lateral process that allows staff to transfer laterally into vacant positions to accommodate different shifts or different days off. Eliminating these vacancies poses a recruitment challenge. It also limits our ability to post open positions and continue hiring while lateral movements are taking place and also fostering retention. So turning to the Commissioner's office, you'll see in each section the pointed organizational chart, and the red boxes or red numbers are places in which positions are being abolished. In the Commissioner's office, our tech support specialist provides analytical data often asked for by the legislature that would no longer be provided as we do not have a relief factor or person who could do that work. They also publish our annual report and consolidate all the information across the whole of the department, and that would have to fall to someone else. Our program specialist, that is a public information officer. They handle all of our information between the public and the department, right to know requests, media requests, and other stakeholders. That responsibility would have to fall to another member of the department. The program specialist also considered in here is a liaison to outward constituents. People talk about having a call center. We have one person who fields all the inquiries from the thousands of people affected in our communities by incarceration. In the absence of this person, we will go back to a system in which they randomly call extensions until they find a person to try to get an answer, to try to accomplish something. Investing in this one person has created an efficiency in this department. Finally, there was a decision to eliminate the Commissioner's administrative assistant. This person actually ensures that the Commissioner's office is at the right place at the right time, responding to the right people. In the absence of that, either the Commissioner would do that work or someone else would have to lean in and assist. Moving on to our victim services unit, there was a decision to abolish a victim witness specialist that is partially grant funded through VOCA. That position provides victim offender dialogue, which is a required part of VOCA funds that come from the federal government into the state of New Hampshire. We support thousands of individuals affected by crime, both at parole hearings and in addition to at revocation hearings. There's a chart at the bottom that indicates how many notifications we sent out on behalf of individuals affected by crime. This position makes sense for restorative justice. It does not make sense to cut it. Moving on to the Division of Administration, Bureau of Financial and Contract Services on page 13, we start describing that process with regards to not having an accounts payable person for non-correctional industries processing and eliminating that places orders for the department. It eliminates one-time full-time staff member assigned to processing restitution payments to victims, and equipment will likely not be inventory or tracked or surplused in a timely manner as a result of those abolished positions. Abolishing these positions also significantly impacts the department and will result in a lack of separation of duties of fundamental accounting standard that prevents the possibility of fraud. All aspects of the Bureau will suffer from the slowdown of processing, and priorities that change daily due to emergent needs at our facilities and district office will always take the lead, and they do in general, but they will take the lead and it will be slow to resolve them. With less staff, the emergencies will still receive top priority, as I just stated, but other work will fall behind and fall without being processed. In addition to, we have a person who helps us and assures that we meet our needs with regard to the credit card payment processing and processing those through the Department of Administrative Services. And then we will be in violation of that contract because we won't have the persons there in order to do that fundamental work. We will challenge with complying with the manual of procedures, as we'll no longer have, again, the staff for separation of duties, processing, invoicing, accepting and depositing checks, and reconciling bank statements. These separation of duties and accounting and auditing process ensure the integrity of the financial reporting and regulatory compliance of internal procedures and policies and laws. Year-end reporting will be significantly delayed, and delayed required reporting to DAS will occur as a result of cutting the financial positions in our financial services office. On page 15, all the red boxes are related to cuts in our classification and client records office out of the New Hampshire State Prison. I think it's important to note this office provides services to all facilities. It is just housed at the New Hampshire State Prison for Men, and we have one individual specifically assigned to NCF. Moving to page 16, I want to talk about the proposed elimination of the positions of client records and classification bureaus, which would significantly compromise the Department of Corrections' ability to carry out core legal and operational responsibilities. These bureaus manage essential functions such as sentence calculations, release processing, detainer management, classification reviews, and compliance with court orders and the Prison and Rape Elimination Act requirements. They are central to ensuring that individuals are lawfully incarcerated, properly classified, and released at appropriate times. In the absence of these positions, we would not fundamentally meet the basic requirements of the Prison Rape Elimination Act, and as a result, we would not meet our requirement annually, and we will affect the state's delivery of burn jag funds, and those would be reduced until we came into compliance with PREA. Client record serves as an administrative backbone to every inmate's case, maintaining sentence structuring, processing judicial correspondence, and ensuring accurate and timely release documentation. Classification staff determine custody levels, conduct risk assessments, and facilitate inmate movement and housing in accordance with law and policy. The removal of these positions will result in backlogs, delays, and increased risk of serious administrative errors. These functions are not discretionary. They are mandated by law and critical to public safety. Without sufficient staffing, the department faces heightened risk of premature and unlawful releases, as well as legal exposure for failing to comply with sentencing or classification statutes. The resulting strain on remaining staff would further erode the department's ability to maintain compliance and operate efficiently across all departments, and this role would have to fall onto corrections officers because we could not do without it. At the Northern New Hampshire Correctional Facility, there's a mail clerk position. They process literally all the mail that comes into that institution. They look for contraband, they wear personal protective equipment, and this position, in the absence of it, it would fall to a corrections officer whose services would be better deployed in the housing units. Moving to page 18, the idea that we would cut recreation positions across the whole of the department where there is one full-time recreation person for the total inmate population is a demonstration of not understanding that people need to learn positive ways in which to have positive outlets. They're incarcerated for felony crimes in the state of New Hampshire, and they need appropriate diversional awareness and other opportunities to stay busy outside of programming and treatment. And so recreation plays a critical role in maintaining the overall safety and security of the correctional facilities. When inmates have access to regular, structured recreational activities, it reduces idle time, which is a key contributor to mapping behavioral issues and reducing facility disruption. Recreation provides a constructive outlet for stress, frustration, and energy, helping to prevent conflict and lowering the risk of violence. So just like many of us have hobbies, whether it's knitting, basketball, acting for that matter, recreation plays a role in helping people learn ways to have positive outlets rather than negative outlets for frustrations. And quite frankly, it also helps people be better parents. Moving on to the Division of Administration managerial staff, we have some cuts that continue throughout that whole organizational chart. You'll see them page after page. Maintenance staff includes our HVAC technicians, electricians, electronic techs, our locksmith, our plumbers, and our maintenance techs. They respond to over 3,700 work orders per year in addition to emergency repairs. They maintain and repair 3 correctional facilities, 3 transitional housing units, 1 transitional work center, 1 secure psychiatric unit, our Concord district office, our farm services, and the resale outlet store. In addition, they supervise and teach inmate work crews and coordinate the services of contracted employees and services performed by vendors. The impact of these proposed cuts is the elimination of critical maintenance positions within the Department of Corrections would have an immediate and destabilizing impact on facility operations and safeties. These positions are responsible for maintaining essential infrastructure across more than 623,000 square feet of correctional space, including electrical, plumbing, HVAC, boiler systems, security technology, and emergency generators. Their work ensures that the prison remains operational, secure, and compliant with legal and safety standards. The cuts would eliminate 100% of the department's licensed gas fitters, leaving no one qualified to operate our boiler house at the New Hampshire State Prison for Men. Without the boiler house, the facility would be without heat and hot water, basic fundamental infrastructure. Contractors, unless engaged through a full-time privatized maintenance contract, cannot replace the staff holding a gas fitter's license who maintain and repair the boilers. It also cuts all licensed plumbers and nearly all trained staff to work on both new and aging heating systems, some of which date back decades. And I know I've testified to the New Hampshire State Prison's infrastructure being back to the 1870s. The electrical shop, HVAC coverage, and most of the electrical security systems team would be eliminated, and the lock shop, already under-resourced, would be reduced to just 1 officer covering the entire state. This reduction in the lock shop leaves the department unable to maintain the hundreds of correctional-grade locks or manage the cataloging and tracking of the facility keys. As a result, the department would need to contract for emergency and tracking of facility keys and on-call services, for instance, when a cell door malfunctions and staff are unable to gain entry. This presents a significant safety risk, particularly in situations involving medical emergencies or active assaults. Additionally, it places control of the prison keys in the hands, potentially, of external vendors. Industry standards recommend 1 maintenance staff member per 25,000 square feet. Even before these cuts, the department was already 9 positions short. Further reductions would push the remaining staff beyond capacity, likely resulting in attrition, worsened facility conditions, and delays in emergency repairs, such as sewer backups, which already occur weekly. These risks not only endanger the health and safety of inmates, but staff, and open the state for legal liability for unsanitary and inhumane conditions. The positions are not optional. They are essential to the maintaining constitutional conditions of confinement, and without them, the department cannot safely operate its facilities. Abolishing the positions would ultimately result in relying on contractors to perform the same work. That will be at 2 to 3 times the hourly cost of our state employees. In addition to the higher hourly rate, security staff will have to provide security escort to the entire time that the contracted vendor is in the institution. And so while our maintenance staff do the work now, that's 1 person rather than a corrections officer and a contracted vendor moving through the facilities and wondering when they're going to get there to provide the service. Maintenance staff are also responsible for snow removal across all facilities, and with this reduction, the department would need to contract for those services, as the remaining maintenance personnel would be insufficient to do both maintaining anything about the facilities and manage plowing. So in short, those savings cost the state more money than less money. We've discussed laundry, so I will not go through that again. There's detail with regard to our laundry service. Our kitchen staff, they are ServSafe certified. They manage the kitchens in 3 correctional facilities in accordance with state requirements as set forth by the Division of Public Health. Over 5,700 meals are prepared daily, including special medical and religious diets, with a 14-hour daily operational schedule. Correctional facilities are required by federal law to meet the Religious Land Use Incarcerated Persons Act You'll hear that referred to as RLUIPA, to accommodate inmates' religious diets. That is not optional, it is a federal requirement. Kitchen supervisors oversee the everyday operations of the kitchen to include ordering from our warehouse to ensure the correct amount of inventory. They ensure that the inmate workers are not giving individuals special meals or special favors during the distribution of meals process. They ensure that food is cooked at the right temperature for the right person at the right time. They have kept us in the green with public health in our public health audits, and in the absence of them, corrections officers would have to stand in. We will not likely pass our public health audits. I continue to discuss that on page 25. So for example, 2 shifts are required to work each shift, 1 per line at the New Hampshire State Prison for Men. That is because we have 2 levels. One is the meal distribution level, and one is literally where the kitchen is. And you need 2 people, 1 upstairs, 1 downstairs, to supervise that process. So cutting the positions here, reduce it to 20 shifts per week instead of the 28 that we need. And in the absence, 8 shifts would have to be covered by corrections officers. Moving on to the warehouse, the department has 2 warehouses, a central warehouse at the Southern Region facilities and one that serves the Northern Correctional Facility. The warehouse is a central point for both packages and supplies and equipment and distribution through the region, and staff supervise workers in all aspects of warehouse operations. In the absence of our warehouse staff, we would have to put corrections officers there to monitor the inmate workers to ensure that they were not engaging in the passing of contraband, and to also make sure that inventories were controlled within financial responsibility. So moving on, we continue to talk about additional cuts, whether it's the secretaries that are managing the contacts with the supply vendors, managing the receipt and inventory of receiving those deliverables. This would all fall on corrections officers to make sure that we were good stewards of the state's dollar.
I have concerns, Commissioner. We're only halfway through your presentation.
Okay.
And we've overshot the time considerably. And again, I just, you know.
Senator Graham, I apologize.
There's others that are behind you. I just
Okay.
want to point out the time.
I will try to go to some highlights if that will be the will. I know you will read what I've provided you. I did talk about the Field Services Division, but I talked about their administrative staff who are at the windows. The proposal abolishes 2 fiscal agents. Those fiscal agents are part of a group of individuals who are collecting over $108 million owed to victims, survivors, and courts. If we move on to the Division of Rehabilitative Services on page 28, 29, you'll see all of the positions that are proposed for abolishment. These include our Family Connection Center, our teachers, our educators, all of the elements associated with developing a parole plan or opportunities to show or demonstrate that you have changed as an individual so you could be granted the privilege of parole. Many of those services will either not happen because we will not have people with the skills to do it, or individuals simply will not have rehabilitative or treatment programs to be successful to attain the privilege of parole. 31 continues to talk about our work of our case managers. 32 continues to talk about those individuals as well. In the Bureau of Allied Health Services, and then Bureau of Behavioral Health Services and Nursing Services, you'll see continued recommendations for cuts. In the absence of having state mental health, nursing, or other healthcare services, will be forced to contract for those services. I already have a temporary staffing service, so I already know that if a nurse costs the state $45, the temporary nurse costs the state over $100 per hour. It's not a physically responsible decision. We'll still have to meet our constitutional requirement to provide health care, and the department will either contract for it and come to fiscal for those dollars in one way, shape, or form, but it will cost the state more money. On page 38, we talk about our pharmacy and our pharmacy process with regard to medical waste, monitoring that waste, participating in opportunities to get discounts on our pharmaceutical costs, and our pharmacy staff are an integral part to that process. The cuts went as far as cutting the only dental assistant we had at NCF, so we would not have a dental assistant. We will we already have existing litigation on dental services that will only enhance the adverse outcome that would happen with the department. I go into full detail of those areas on 39, 40, 41, and 42. On page 44, you'll see all the cuts in the area of the Division of Personnel and Information. Those are our employee development is employee training. Part of retention is developing employees and making them want to stay and grow in your department. We would not have the resources to do that work. We would be, the proposed cuts eliminate a training captain and our training manager. We'll have a difficult time meeting our training requirements. And then in addition to, we will be losing, if these cuts were to pass, essential functions of our payroll and other human resource process to support the existing staff that are left behind. It further goes on to cut our IT, proposes to cut our IT services, and so any efficiency we gained on those type of services would be lost. The Division of Professional Standards is our DOC investigators. They primarily do the work of intervening on inmate criminal conduct, including gang information, interceding on communications, interceding when individuals in the community are colluding to commit crime in the Department of Corrections with inmates. That's their primary role and primary function. That would eliminate 8 of those individuals and leaving us with only 4 to cover all of our correctional institutions, and the population is still at approximately 2,000, in addition to those in the community that are engaging with them to commit crime. These are individuals that are critical when they're
I have a question from Senator Lang.
Thank you, Sam. Sorry.
That's good.
Microphone.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to talk about the professional standards group specifically. We were just talking about. This is the group that does your inmate on inmate crime that happens within a prison, I'm sure.
Yes.
Also does inmate on staff.
Yes.
Staff on inmate potentially.
Yes.
As well as just staff-related issues that potentially could rise to a criminal. They investigate all those things, and we're saying we're going to do away with that?
We're doing away with 8 of them and leaving 4 across the whole department.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that question. They also intervene on contraband, so they listen to the phone communications and messaging and look at the mail. They intercede when members of the judiciary are receiving criminal threats and then move that information forward to the proper parties. They are a major component of ensuring safety in our organization. That is their primary role.
Senator?
Thank you. So if we don't have those people in there performing this function, what happens? Who fills in for them?
There's really no one to fill in for them. Our law enforcement captains and lieutenants have primary functions in their housing units. Mm-hmm. So this is the adjudicative arm. So if something starts there, they pass it to the investigator and then they take the rest of it. Or the investigator gets the information, involves that captain or lieutenant, and then they all become part of it. But the investigator still prosecutes that process, is our liaison to whether it's the county attorney or the public integrity unit. We would not, this legislature passed New Hampshire 106L and the Conduct Review Committee, we would not comply with that. In addition to these investigators, also allow us to comply with POL standards to do background investigations for our new hires for corrections officers. We would only have the 4 across the whole agency to do all of what we're discussing. We would not be successful.
Quick follow-up. So if that were to occur, would you feel this would lead us to more litigation perhaps within?
100%.
We're going to end up in court on a lot of these cases if we don't handle them correctly.
Yes, correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. I will just go to the conclusion, given that the chair has given me patience and grace. In conclusion, the budget passed by the New Hampshire House of Representatives is not just a reduction in funding, is a fundamental threat to the Department of Corrections' ability to operate legally, safely, and responsibly. These cuts severely inhibit our compliance with the state's administrative rules, make it virtually impossible for us to meet the requirements of the Lawman Decree and the Holiday, Woods, Lapine, and Fiandaca Court decisions. These were binding legal mandates rooted in constitutional rights, not optional goals. The proposed reductions also dismantle critical rehabilitation and reentry programs that reduce recidivism and promote long-term public safety. The RAND Corporation found that incarcerated individuals who participate in education programs are 43% less likely to return to prison. Eliminating these programs strips individuals of the opportunity to succeed upon release and ensures higher long-term costs for the state of New Hampshire. The gutting of the Department of Corrections Bureau of Investigation poses a direct threat to the safety and security of our correctional facilities. Investigators play a critical role in preventing and addressing the introduction of drugs, contraband, and gang-related activity within the walls. Without a dedicated investigative team to proactively gather intelligence, conduct targeted searches, and pursue criminal charges against those introducing illegal substances and weapons, these threats will grow unchecked. The absence of investigative oversight will allow organized criminal networks and gang influence to expand on our facilities, endangering staff, residents, and the public. Reducing or eliminating this vital function undermines the department's ability to maintain order, enforce accountability, and protect the integrity of our correctional environment. Equally concerning is the elimination of civilian positions responsible for classifications, maintenance, laundry, kitchen operations, recreations, mental health, and programming. Removing these vital roles does not eliminate the work. They simply shift the burden onto already overworked corrections officers' workforce. Officers will be forced to pick up non-custodial responsibilities, diverting their focus from security and safety. This is not only endangers staff and inmates, but it almost certainly will lead to a significant increase in mandatory overtime, further compounding the department's staffing crisis and driving up long-term costs. The result is a correctional system that is undersourced, overburdened, and increasingly out of legal compliance. These cuts may appear to offer short-term savings, but they guarantee higher long-term costs through litigation, increased recidivism, staff burnout, and public safety risks. We respectfully ask the Senate to restore critical funding so that the department can meet its legal obligations, reduce long-term taxpayer costs, and fulfill its mission to protect the public and rehabilitate those in our custody.
I have a couple of questions. Senator Lang, Senator Birdsall, and Senator.
Thank you again for taking my question. Thank you for the presentation. So the one time I've served on fiscal, you were in asking for more money for overtime. And we had the conversation about burnout, right? And forced overtime and the need to maintain officers. So as I do some basic math, my understanding is first that the House took some of your unfilled, unfunded position, eliminated those, but also took some of your unfilled, funded position, got rid of those as well, on the correction officer side, and then moved, it looks like about $2.9 million over into the overtime line, which my basic math says that's around 55 to 60,000 hours of overtime they're funding rather than fund the position. Is that the way you look at it and see it?
That's the way I interpreted it. I would add that given the opportunity that the legislature has provided, allowing us to fill and recruit those has been a really critical path in moving from that 54% to 41% and using the process that if left unfilled, we move the money. So the state is basically saying to our corrections officer workforce, we're not interested in recruiting for these positions anymore. We'll just fill your overtime.
Oh,
And I assume that has a devastating impact on morale within the correction officer community.
Yes, Senator Lang, 100%.
Thank you.
Senator Birdsall.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. Did anyone from House Finance actually sit down and talk to you and talk about the impacts that it would have on the facilities?
No, Senator Birdsall, they did not give me the opportunity to discuss these impacts.
Except for the except for the investigators, which can't be, the corrections officers can't fill in those. My understanding is the corrections officers will have to fill in a lot of these positions. One, do you have any corrections officers in the pipeline for hiring now?
We have had a steady stream of corrections officers in the pipeline. We have, I think, about 7 or 8 in what's called background investigation. Okay. We have the largest class we've seen, around 28 or 29 actively in the academy right now.
Wow. Okay. Do you think this will impact your capability of recruiting?
I 100% will impact it adversely. Who would want to come and work for the Department of Corrections in these conditions? And in fairness, Senator Birdsall, your question is very poignant. We're recruiting for the same entry-level member of law enforcement that every member of our New Hampshire law enforcement is recruiting for. Why would you choose the Department of Corrections under these conditions over working for your local police department, the state troopers, or Fish and Game?
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sort of, and thank you for taking my question. Sort of following up on Senator Bertzel's first question. The House budget is different from what they did to another member of departments, where they specified a back of the budget cut and basically would rely on the expertise of the department to figure out how to manage those cuts. But there was no conversation
No, no,
with
Senator
your
Rosenwald.
department?
There, according to testimony provided by Representative McGuire, he's talking to persons behind the wall. I don't know who those persons are, but they clearly do not know the depth of adverse outcomes of what's been proposed.
Follow up, please. Or sort of a separate question. I note that your recidivism rates have gone down a lot. Will these cuts impact your ability to make reentry into the communities as successful as you've been able to make it?
Senator Rosenwald, these cuts reverse any traction that we've had in reducing recidivism. The recidivism rate will go up. And interestingly enough, and I know Chairman Phillips is right behind me, we won't even have individuals to assist in writing parole plans, let alone opportunities for them to show that they've engaged in programming and treatment that reverses the conduct from which resulted in their incarceration. So I don't know how they'll even access the privilege of parole. You're welcome.
Senator Waters.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this thorough view of what these impacts of these cuts would be. On the mental health side, would we potentially be in violation of the settlement given these cuts?
Yes, all of these proposed mental health cuts literally bring us back to the threat of the lawman consent decree. They don't even bring us back just to the holiday court order in which the court ordered us to do certain things. It brings us back to the conditions in which the lawman consent decree was challenging the state of New Hampshire.
If I could follow up. And just one more question about the rehabilitative services, and the RAND Corporation suggesting 43% less recidivism, and I see that particularly on educational programs, the elimination there, and they've been highly successful, your culinary arts and other programs as well. And so how do you think that would impact not just the life in the you know, the atmosphere in the prison, but also the recidivism?
It will have, again, adverse effects on the recidivism rate because those programs, culinary arts, our licensed cosmetology school, the woman who is running our cosmetology program, it's her license that's allowed us to open a barbering program. So all of these real life transfers from vocational skills to jobs in the community will be eliminated. And we have watched amazing success stories since we implemented those programs of people opening their own shops and actually getting state-based awards. And I won't go into further detail, but we're very proud of those. Those will be eliminated, and vocational programs really won't exist.
I just made one more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, you know, I am familiar with the long-term issues about hiring and filling positions, and I really am aware of the incredible efforts you've done to make progress on that. Also the overtime. I mean, I know you had the National Guard in there at one point. So I guess it's somewhat of a hypothetical. Do you think, given the House's focus on the overtime issue, do you think we'd be able to develop a plan that might set some reasonable numbers of reduction of dollars, but that threw back to the budget cuts and other ways of looking at the relationship between overtime and fill positions, that we might be able to come up with a plan that would work better for the issues you address here?
Senator, you know me well. I'm happy to work with anyone on those questions and trying to map some opportunities.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for your presentation. So we've talked about morale of your workforce. We've talked about cuts in the services. I have one more important question to me. Do you think that this will provide an unsafe working position? I mean, when you work people too many hours, you start to get a fatigue factor, and do you feel like this is going to create a safety hazard for not only your staff but the inmates?
Yes, this will immediately create a safety hazard for the staff at the Department of Corrections and the inmates incarcerated there.
Thank you.
and will likely result in an ask to use the National Guard.
Thank you.
Senator Lang.
Just one more question. Do you know what your lapse is going to be this year?
I don't have a lapse at this point, and it will be very low because we were not given warrants for the employee bargained increases. So that's a tough question, but I will do my best to see if there's anything we'll be able to give back, sir.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Additional comments?
I appreciate the Senate and the time spent here. As always, I'm available to assist, to provide any information. I will take you through any organizational section of this department in full transparency, and just really appreciate any reconsideration of what the House has put forward to the Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adult Parole Board is next. I don't think you guys have as many fans. The room kind of cleared out a little bit. Go ahead when you're ready. Need a red, we need a red light.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Roger Phillips, and I'm chairperson of the Adult Parole Board. And in our 5 minutes, I just want to touch on some of the highlights. In order to make the governor's projected budget position had to be cut in the very small office of the parole office. And the parole office consists of 6 employees, 5 of whom are full-time and 1 part-time. And as a result of an audit in 2019, another position was created for that 6 person, the 5 full-time in the office. And of course, whenever you have a small office like that, whenever there's sickness or vacations or whatnot, it's really important to have someone able to fill in. And of course, in all our hearing days, 1 member has to come out of the office and act as, in essence, the clerk of the hearing. So in order to comply with the audit and do the functions of the board, where we have asked for that position to be reinstated. But I will also, I think there are some, because of some proposed cuts in the Department of Corrections, of course, it would increase the work of the parole office in order to make certain that those who are eligible for parole have completed the programs that are needed, and to complete the application for parole and the resident release synopsis, those things that in order for us to function properly. And I'll ask our Director of Operations, Jay Mackey, who has spent a good deal of time in corrections, including in classifications, a very important part of the Department of Corrections, to further assist in our presentation.
Thank you. My name is Jay Mackey. I'm the Director of Operations for the Parole Board. I've been in corrections for about 26 years throughout various agencies and positions, as well as being uniformed and civilian staff. I was a former administrator of classifications for the DOC, as well as a supervisor of offender records before going over to the Parole Board. Was also a case manager there too, so I know the value of the positions Commissioner Hanks was talking about, as I was either a supervisor or one of those positions that are listed to be cut. Those positions provide a lot of input for people that are coming up for parole hearings. Without those positions, we have 6 members of our office, including me. We're looking at 5 now if we cannot have this position funded. 2 to 3 of us will end up having to travel to NCF up in Berlin, probably twice a month or so, to be able to assist the inmates with filling out parole packets and trying to come up with reentry plans if they do not have the case management there. So it is a significant cost to the state to keep people incarcerated longer. So we do our best to make sure we are paroling the people that have earned the privilege of parole. We average about 45 releases per month on parole. If those people throughout a 12-month period all stayed 1 extra day, that's $120,000. It's a significant increase with the amount of delays that a lot of these cuts will cause. So if these cuts are realized to the DOC, then it's really critical that we have that position that we are requesting. We need it now, but if there are cuts made to the DOC, we will absolutely need it to try to, relieve the burden on the taxpayers to be able to make sure these people are ready for parole. We can't have people paroling out that have not had a chance at rehabilitation. It's a tough decision or an awkward position for the parole board members to be in if they are choosing whether to incarcerate someone longer because they don't have the ability to get into programming because the DOC can't provide it, or to release them because they've otherwise earned it except have not been able to take that rehabilitative program, and then hopes that they can maybe get some type of treatment in the community, which a lot of this treatment inside, a lot of the programming inside the prison is not available in the community. So it's an awkward position for the parole board to be in, and in the interest of public safety, most of those people would be denied parole, if not all, if they have not been able to show that they have rehabilitated and changed their ways. I think in the interest of time, that's really, yeah, it's really the
Questions
stress
from
I wanted to
senators?
put on that.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. I noticed in your budget in House Bill 1 that I can see where you lose a permanent position, but then there's a big increase in temporary appointments in class line 050. Is that, so, I mean, the actual decrease
Oh,
of the parole board is like $4,000.
Well, those are the parole board members. Their stipends were increased from $20,000 annually to $30,000 for the 3 regular members and $40,000 for the vice chairman. That's what those increases are from the current fiscal year to the proposed one. Because that statute was approved, that bill was approved during this current fiscal year.
In other words, those are the parole board members, not the office staff.
Okay,
Yeah. They're the
Thank
ones
you.
sitting on the panel voting.
got it.
Additional
Thank you.
questions? Senator Waters.
So, from what I'm hearing, in your discussion of recidivism, that you would concur with what we heard from the Commissioner of Corrections, that perhaps the educational rehabilitative services are one of the things that would use. Do you see that in practice, in the people you're working with, that they are less likely for recidivism if they've had the educational and the rehabilitative services?
Yes, I've been with the DOC, not currently with the DOC, but I started working there in 2016 as a case manager. And I've seen the changes that Commissioner Hanks has brought about to this since she came on board. With a lot of the programming, the recidivism, I've seen the numbers or the DOC has put out recidivism-wise. We're doing our own study for recidivism. It's actually the back page of the packet. This is the 3rd year of the study, so we'll actually have some final numbers because recidivism studies usually do at least a 3-year period. Right now, though, through the first 4 months of the year, the first 3 months till April 2nd, we had 100 individuals, and believe 29 of them have returned to the prison over the 3-year period, 22 of them in the first 12 months. So right now, that's a 29% recidivism rate. I know those numbers are probably going to go up. The numbers I have in the back of the packet are about 39%, which coincide with the DOCs. I'm taking a different population than what they have. They're taking every inmate that's been released. The study I'm doing is people that are being released on parole for the first time. So there's 402 inmates in that study, and I'm hoping, by the end of this year, we'll have a more,
Certainly, I want to make a comment on some of the statements about the travel that would be required. Certainly, we would want you to look at other alternatives, video conferencing, hiring a part-time paralegal up in that area, or other things. So, again, we're looking for a cooperative effort here. So, if you wanted to get back to us with anything in that, I'd certainly appreciate it. Any comment from you?
Well, it all depends what positions are cut in the Department of Corrections as to what other types of activities we would have to do. But we would certainly, we try to work hand in hand with the Department of Corrections, and there's great cooperation from our point of view. So we will do whatever we can to make sure that things are done efficiently and without waste.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you very much. The Liquor Commission.
thank you very much.
That's there in case anybody needs to have,
Okay.
to look up the somebody could ask you, Commissioner, about your line item, and you'd want to look it up.
Having a great CFO. Good to see you, too. Thank you. So good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Joseph Malika, Chairman of the New Hampshire Liquor Commission, and with me is our CFO, Tina Demers. I'll take you through the front part of the packet quickly, because I know that you've been busy all day. So on page 2, 17 controlled jurisdictions across the United States, of which New Hampshire is one. There's certainly some values to the 3-tier system on page 3, but the most important one that we feel is the product tracking, which prevents the tainted and counterfeit sales of products. So those stores, outlets that you go into are based on retail outlets, but they're there to control the sale of alcohol in the state. Worldwide, in the past 5 years, 11,800 people have been affected by methanol-tainted alcohol, and 4,500 people have died. On page 4, you're looking at the competition that the Liquor Commission competes with. There's 2 control states around us, Vermont and Maine, but Massachusetts is where the real competition lies. Total Wine and Spirits, $6 billion in revenue on page 4, surpassing Costco as the top wine retailer. 277 stores in 29 states with 11,000 employees. They now have 12 stores in New England, 4 in Connecticut, and 8 in Massachusetts, as of 2011, when Governor Patrick signed a bill to increase the amount of liquor licenses allowed in the state. On page 5, you'll see the main driver
across the nation for the decline of alcohol sales, cannabis being the number one. You have 3 states around you where cannabis is legal. You have the corresponding sales and taxes that go along with that. Then you can expect $3 billion in sales in those states in 2025. On page 6, you'll see some factors impacting global alcohol sales. In the United States, for the first time in nearly 30 years, there was a decline in alcohol in 2023, which was 2%, and we're expected to be 5.9% by the end of 2025, and I'll run into some of those numbers in the next few slides. On page 7, global factors. Modernizing trend of non-alcoholic growth is huge. For the first time, more Americans are using marijuana on a daily basis or nearly daily basis than alcohol. You have 17.7 million people that are using marijuana a day and 14.7 million people who are using alcohol daily. The last bullet is in 2023, the World Health Organization put out a statement that no level of alcohol consumed is safe for human health. That obviously didn't help alcohol business around the world. On page 8 and page 9, you'll see some industry trends that I did share with some of you in fiscal on Friday, but particularly all the way to the left on the top, you can see the heat map broken down by quadrant, the Northeast region. You can see in the dark colored off-premise and the lighter colored on-premise. You can see wine and spirit sales. We're down in New England about 10.5% in spirits and about 14.8% in wine. That is both on and off-premise. You'll notice down in the bottom right-hand corner that NHLC is trending a little bit less than that. Total wine and spirits on and off-premise is down 9.4%. And wine is down 8.2%. So we are tracking better than the industry trends in the Northeast. On page 10, you'll see that we did $744 million in net sales in 2024, and that we're governed by RSA 176.3. On page 11, the Commission's divisions and responsibilities. Just quickly, Office of the Commission, Division of Enforcement, Division of Administration, and the Division of Marketing and Merchandising. And on page 12, the current organizational structure of the Liquor Commission. HB 538 on page 13 is proposal to add a Division of Finance Director, which was a finding in our audits in 2018, 19, and 20. We wanted to wait until we put this position in place until the new D365 system is launched. We launched that last April, so we fully launched it. It's been launched a year. And this will create a division director position with 21 employees under it. It's actually the Division of Finance and Auditing. And quickly on the top of that page, you'll see that the Commission currently has 1,000 plus or minus employees, 371 full-time. Of those 371, 237 are in the outlets and 640 part-time employees in our outlets. On page 14, just some outlines of what the D365 system has done. And as I've said, we've been live for a year. And the goal with that was to modernize a 40-year-old system. And the goal of that was to make sure that the consumers in our stores didn't recognize that there was a change in the system. And we feel that in launching the system, we were successful in that. Just one quick note that the zero cost of MAPR, the 45-year-old system, had zero cost to the Liquor Commission, and the new system is about $7 million a year. in order to run and update, which is you're constantly at the mercy of Microsoft because you're updating the system all the time, and that's part of how they acquire revenue. So on page 15, you'll see some outlet changes. The most important one is that our Hampton properties, northbound and southbound, we're in the process of selling those, and through the legislature, some language was put in years ago that said that the revenues from that will be used to pay off the bonds of the Liquor Commission. At the current point, the red line PNS contract is at DOJ for their review. So we're in the final steps of that. On page 16, just a quick breakdown of our outlets. The state outlet locations are at the bottom. 9 state-owned outlet locations and 59 leased, 37 with curbside pickup. The marketing goals, obviously our marketing goals is to be the first class, best of class alcohol beverage retailer and wholesaler in the country. And we've been given many accolades over the years proving that we're certainly one of the best, and we're very thankful for those accolades. On page 18, web and e-commerce, you see that we have 125,000 visitors a month to our website. Our curbside pickup, 3.2 million in sales in FY24. That was up 2.1% over 2023. 12.2 million year to date, and we implemented that in 2020. One of the things that I just like to bring to point, our out-of-state direct ship is our next goal, and that will be for wine only. We'll be shipping into all 50 states when we become licensed in those states, and we'll operate a wholesale operation out of our DHL warehouse in Bow and be able to ship nationwide. We have a lot of products in this state that other consumers don't see, especially high-end wine, so we're going to take advantage of that with wine consumers across the country. That process is underway as we speak. On page 19, you'll see our Instagram followers, our Facebook followers, and X followers. We send out 7 targeted emails a month to our consumers. We try to find a balance between over inundating people with marketing and making sure that they see and remember our name and our features and what we have on sale, promoting our brand all of the time. On page 20, these are our Google ratings. You'll see that 92% of our reviews are 4 or 5-star ratings. We're very pleased with that. Obviously, that's an approach to get our name out there online and have people have the opportunity to comment on how we're doing. On page 21, the enforcement agenda and its 3-prong approach of enforcement, licensing, and education. On page 22, I'll just draw you to the top of that piece, which is the licensing type for on-premise. We have 2,183 on-premise licensees, and the sales correlated to those licensees are 95.2 million. We have off-premise licensees. We have 2,147 of those. The corresponding sales with those licensees is 119.7 million. And our direct shippers, which are people that ship product into the state, we have 1,369 licensees, and that brings in 1.2 million. We have a total of 6,281 licensees. And the main reason for my bringing this up is because of the bill that's currently in place, which would remove our enforcement division sworn staff from the Liquor Commission's org chart, which would be an impossible task to run a business without the Liquor Commission enforcement. So in 2024, that agency, that division of the agency brought in $18 million. Down in the bottom corner, you can see the trainings that went on in 2024. The total persons trained were 11,155, and the public awareness events that we touched through the 59 events was 135,500 people. On page 23, you'll see our public awareness and education. This is education that we go out to the community, to the licensees, both on and off premise and in our stores. And this is free education that for our licensees to make sure that they're serving alcohol safely across the state. And on page 24, the programs themselves are listed. And let's see, on page 25, just HB2 sections related to the NHLC that would eliminate the 19 full-time sworn positions and 15 part-time sworn positions. The calculated savings for 26 and 27, that does not take into consideration the payout for employees in 26 and or the 6 positions identified that would be filled by bumping rights across the state. So just a little update on that. And at this point, we'll go over to the budget piece. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. I'd just like to point out too, on page 25, section 389 is the repeal for the distribution to the Alcohol Abuse and Prevention Fund. And that's removing a transfer of about 10.7 million to HHS. And then section 411 repeals the prohibition of using general funds for the Granted Advantage program and removes the provision requiring the Liquor Commission to make up any shortfall in that program. And that removes the transfer of 12.6 million annually. So on page 26, we've provided a look from the FY24 actuals, our FY25 adjusted authorized, and the 26-27 requests. We have the agency's request, and then there's cuts that we made of 2.8 million in the governor's phase, and then you have the cuts from the House phase, and their cuts for the Division of Enforcement is the $3 million, and then they're removing the transfer to the alcohol fund and to Granted Advantage. And in FY26, that's 23.3 million. In FY27, it's 23.8 million. On page 27, we just provided a breakdown of each of our major categories so that you can see what makes up each of the categories, where salaries and benefits are 55% of our total budget. We did cut that by 900,000 by reducing 7 positions and unfunding them. I won't go through the rest of it. You can see the items in red are where we did cuts. If you go to page 28, this shows you the request to add back the funds for enforcement. The House budget for this, it's on the compare page number 396. The House budget was 1.7 million. We're requesting to add back the 3 million to bring the enforcement budget back to 4.7 million, and the same in FY27, bringing it to 4.9 million. And then on the bottom of that page, I included the total from your compare so that you could see that the budget from the House is 89.7 million. We're requesting the additional 3 million, which brings it to 92.7 million in 26 and 94 million in 27. So on page 29 and 30, it's a breakdown of our budget annually by class and by accounting unit so that you can see salaries and benefits are 56% of our overall budget, and store operations makes up 74% of our overall budget. And that's consistent in the 26th and the 27 budget. And in our 26 budget, the request is 2.7 million or 2.8% less than our FY25, and that was due to dragging positions and vacancies. And then in FY27, our budget as proposed is 1.3 million or 1.4% more than the 26 budget. as we proposed. The next 4 slides are each of the divisions. It represents the compare report. So for the Office of the Commission, pages 394 to 395, we're just providing a breakdown of the division and how the numbers are increasing and decreasing. We did this for each of the divisions. I won't go through them all so that you can just look at them, but the Office of the Commission oversees all operations of the commissions with the primary goal to increase sales and maximize profit while operating in a cost-effective and efficient manner. And then you have the Division of Enforcement, which includes enforcement, licensing, education, and grants. The division is responsible for enforcing alcoholic beverage laws, enforcing youth access to tobacco, and providing licensing, education, and support to over those 6,200 licensees. And then we have the Division of Administration. This includes finance, HR, auditing, inventory control, and legal. A restructure moved real estate in the maintenance department along with a newly created department for our next-gen system. So that moved 12 positions from other divisions into this one. That's why you'll see that there's a change in the positions in that division. And then on page 34 is the Division of Marketing and Merchandising. This includes marketing, merchandising, advertising, and our retail store outlets, and the headquarters warehouse. The division oversees the buying, marketing, selling, and distribution of product throughout all our channels to promote sales and maximize profits. On page 35 is just a summary of our workers' comp and our unemployment comp. On page 36, this shows you revenue trends in the transfer language with FY24 actual, 25, 26, and 27 estimates. So starting with gross profit, then we have our other revenue minus our expenses for the net revenue on line 4, and that's in green. So then you have from lines 5 to 7, the transfers to HHS for the granted advantage and the alcohol fund. In 24, we transferred to the general fund on line 8, 109.5 million, and we're estimating 101.7 million in 25. With the HB2 cuts from the House, the transfer in 26 and 27 would actually correspond to line 4, which is the net revenue without the transfers to HHS. If the transfers happened to HHS and that law didn't change, it would be 102.9 or 102.3 in 27 versus the 126.2 for total net revenue. On page 37, this is net liquor and wine sales to profit to show you that our gross profit has been consistent over the last 10 years at 28 to 29%. And then in the bottom graph, you'll see the net profit percentage. We were consistent between 19 and 21% up until 23. The reason we had a decline to about 17% in 24 was for the 10% pay raise, which equated for about 9.5 million, and then the depreciation for the first year of our new system, which was about $5 million. Line 38 is the history of our revenue trends, so you can see the transfers to the general fund and then the transfers to the alcohol and the granted advantage. And then the other graph is beer tax, which is transferred to the general fund consistently about 3 million, down slightly in 24 to 12.5. And then on page 39, this is just based on how current law is now, what the breakdown would look like on the transfers to granted advantage in the alcohol fund. If not, then the transfer all goes to the general fund. And then on page 40 is the charitable contributions. Since 2005, we've worked with our suppliers and brokers to raise over 4.3 million for nonprofit organizations. And on page 41 and 42 are our awards and accolades. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the senators, Senator Lang.
Thank you. Chat about enforcement for a second. With the striking of the enforcement division, does that mean that towns would now be responsible for all the enforcement activities that is currently being done by the state?
That's correct.
Hello?
Follow?
So, we have a bill we worked on together on vaping to deal with taxes and increase, collecting proper taxes and moving that function over to enforcement. Because the idea being that we were not collecting the taxes we should have been, and we're consolidating, making it more efficient, and also allow us to collect the taxes. That would go away as well?
That's correct, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Bertzel?
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. If I recall, listening to the House and the reason why they brought they reduced the enforcement down, they said that enforcement spent more time on the road, on road enforcement rather than enforcing on the licensees. Have you seen that scenario?
Not at all. And what we were asked years ago was to make sure that if, in fact, enforcement was involved in something other than a liquor-type enforcement, that we send those types of activities over to the fiscal and to, I believe, the House as well, to let them know on a quarterly basis how that was done. And I look at those, and there's a very, very minimum amount of time where someone in our enforcement division perhaps sees an accident and stops to assist, or sees someone who's has imbibed too much and maybe speeding. It's a de minimis amount of activity.
It's less than 1% and for safety
Okay.
issues.
Less than 1% of all their activities. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
If you have those reports that you sent to
Sure.
Leroy? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Additional questions, Senator?
Following up on Senator Lang's question about how the cities and towns would be required to enforce the licensees' laws, what about in places that don't have their own local law enforcement?
Well-
Would that be the state police having to monitor underage tobacco sales and liquor sales?
That's correct. And it would, in the way that the bill was put in, with all due respect, and we've spoken about this many times, to not have these folks out here doing the enforcement activities, all those activities that we do, as far as making sure that licensees are contributing what they should be. I was a licensee in the state for 15 years prior to being here, and a licensee in Massachusetts and a licensee in New Jersey. And I can tell you, in the 15 years that I was here in New Hampshire, I saw the local jurisdiction probably twice, and I saw the Liquor Commission at least once or twice a year. And there's the comment that, well, they're going to some licensees 30 times, and they're only going to some licensees 2. Well, if there's a problem licensee, the folks are there to make sure that those licensees are following the letter of the law. There's licensees, a handful of licensees out there, quite frankly, that are problem licensees, and those are the licensees that you go back to and check over and over again to make sure that they're corresponding with the laws that are in place.
Thank you.
Senator Waters?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I have your letter to Senator Carson and Speaker Packard of March 25th, in which you referenced that this cut might jeopardize the $12.8 million granted to DHHS through SINAR, and $14 million of revenue received by the Division of Enforcement. Could you expand on that a little bit about those potential fund
Yeah.
losses?
Yep. Thank you, Senator. The chief will answer that question for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. For the record, Mr. Chairman, my name's Chief Mark Armaganian. I'm the Director of Liquor Enforcement and Licensing. Honorable committee members, Senator Waters, thank you for your question. So what this will do is we run the division on a 4.7. It not only disrupts the 18, almost $19 million that we're bringing in revenue a year, but it also, a lot of people don't realize that we're used as the enforcement arm for other agencies, one being HHS. HHS, through their BDAS SINARD funds of $12.8 million, that money only happens with us holding the tobacco retailers to 80% compliance. Without being at that 80% compliance, they end up losing that money. So it directly affects them, and this was a letter, even though it was approved by the chairman, it was a letter authored by myself.
Follow up?
So to follow up on that, so as I understand under SINAR, that we would have to demonstrate that some other law enforcement operation, wherever it was, or if it was all the municipalities, that they would have to demonstrate their enforcement.
Correct.
In order for that funding from the feds to be provided.
Correct. And with that in mind, with regards to 126K tobacco enforcement, we are the primary enforcement agency with that. Being not only playing at, we talk about on the retail side of things, playing at the elite levels. We are now, since 2017, when I was brought in to create this new liquor enforcement to actually fix the problems that were brought up in this audit that keeps being brought up after 8 years. This new liquor enforcement actually CALEA accredited, being the only state agency that's CALEA accredited and only one of 20 in the state that is playing at the Gold Star International level. So to take anybody else to fill a void that this bill would create would be doing the state and realistically the communities of this state a disservice. It borderlines irresponsible.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you.
Administrative.
Hello.
Whenever you're ready, Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Charlie Arlinghouse. I'm the Commissioner of Administrative Services, and with me are...
Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Rockburn. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for the department.
Hello, I'm Cassie Keene. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of DAS.
I know you're running behind. We probably won't be long. If you look at the slides, you can ignore the first slide. It's a cover page. The second slide is who we are and who we aren't. And you'll hear from who we aren't shortly, but we have 6 independent agencies that are administratively attached, which means I'm not the boss of them, which they will tell you. But I think they're all coming. 4 of them appear to have been, had things happen during the House phase, so they'll probably talk to you about that. But 2 of them either way are still here, definitely. So that's who they are. But we're going to talk to you about the department itself. Agency 14, or Administrative Services, if you will. I'm going to start with a slide on page 3 that tells you a little bit about who we are and why you should like us. So if you look at the line from fiscal 19 to fiscal 25, we went down 7%. The rest of the general fund went up about 33%. We're the only agency below the line or anywhere near below the line. And I say that because I would like some credit for it at the end of the day. That's all. No, just-
Boy, what are you gonna do for us now?
Wait.
Oh, so predictable. Anyway, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the reasons for that. If you go to slide 4, I want to talk to you about administrative services. We have two bunches in almost equal halves. The retiree health program, which is a benefit program, is 31.8 million. Everything else, the department itself, if you will, is 31.7. So they're almost exactly half and half. When I talk about everything else, the department itself, I'm going to talk to you about two different groups. One is plant and property, the maintenance of state buildings, more than 92 state buildings. And the other is operations, or the other divisions of our agency: budget, payroll, purchasing, personnel, everything else that we do. Let me start with, on page 5, plant and property. We maintain 92 buildings. Plant and property has a very small percentage of its budget, 12-13%, that's general funds, and everything else is not general funds, but it is allocated to agencies. So in their budget, there is a line for anyone who is in a state building, and it is their allocated share of the cost of running the buildings of the state. And I say that it's their allocated share. They will occasionally refer to it as rent. We will occasionally refer to it as rent. It's not rent. It's we take the costs and we allocate them. We allocate them by groups and by actual spend, utilities, maintenance, et cetera. The state does a really good job of maintenance of its buildings, given how much is budgeted for maintaining those buildings, which is not really the same thing. We have a team that does an enormous amount of work to make every dollar go one heck of a lot further than you might think it does. The general funds in that budget represent, there's a small energy management program, but generally they represent the allocated cost for people we don't charge. So who do we not charge? You. The legislature, the governor's office, the state house generally. There's an allocated cost of the state house and it's budgeted, but that share is budgeted not as a transfer, but as general funds. In addition to that, there are a couple of small pockets of non-state entities. As a general principle, we don't rent to non-state entities. It's not something we do. There are a couple of exceptions to that. One of them is the American Legion in the Walker Building. There's actually a state law that requires us. They used to be in the State House. They're in the Walker Building. One of the others is the New Hampshire Humanities Council in Dolph, which I've toured with at least one of the committee members in the past. And those are the two biggest ones I can think of. But if there were an entity that you gave space to, it would become a general fund charge. So that's plant and property, page 5. Page 6 is the best financial story in the state in the last decade. And it's the success about retiree health spending. And Cassie is going to tell you all about it.
Good afternoon. I started working at Administrative Services in 2013, and one of the first things that I had to do was go to Fiscal Committee and present a report about whether we were going to be able to meet our retiree health budget. And it was my first big wake-up call that this was going to be very challenging. It's healthcare, of course, and healthcare costs generally go up and not down. So the first time we had really big challenges in retiree health was in 2016. We were doing the budget, and we were underfunded by $4.5 million, and then just bad luck, pharmacy inflation took off like a rocket. And we soon found ourselves $10 million in deficit. And so we worked with the Fiscal Committee to manage that deficit. And when I say manage that deficit, the way you do that is you have to figure out how do you reduce your retiree health benefit costs. And you do it by shifting costs to other payors, in this circumstance, retirees contributing to the cost of retiree health, but also by changing the design of the health benefit plan, meaning what's covered and what's not covered and how much are copays and things like that. So coming out of the 2016 fiscal committee, one of the ways we managed that deficit at the time was that the fiscal committee determined that they would increase the premium contribution that non-Medicare retirees were paying. Those are the early retirees, people who are not yet 65, not yet eligible for Medicare. And they raised that premium contribution from 12.5% of the premium to 17.5%. And they made several changes in prescription drug copays. What we did then was we knew we had a problem in managing retiree health benefit costs, and we did a study working with our health benefit consultant, the Siegel Company. And what we did is we looked at all different kinds of options about what levers could we tweak to manage retiree health benefit costs. That served us well because by the time we were doing the next biennium's budget, we were working with the governor's office at the time, and one of the first things we did was implement a Medicare premium contribution for the first time ever. And it was very significant. It was in the amount of 10%, which isn't a lot. Why it was important is when you consider the breakout in our retirees. Today, for example, we have 1,580 non-Medicare retirees, but we have 10,906 Medicare retirees. So when we first implemented a Medicare premium contribution, it was about getting that larger group contributing and paying something to help mitigate the state's costs of providing that care. And it was very, very helpful. And then what we knew from here is that from doing our long-term study was that there are options for us to explore that could have helped us further reduce our costs. And one of the things that we did was we moved to a Medicare Advantage plan, a group plan for our Medicare retirees, that larger group. And that began the story of the savings that you see on this chart. We implemented in 2019, and we were using our then vendor Anthem. And in 2021, we went out to bid, and we changed vendors as a result of that procurement. And in 2022, where you see the dip in spending, that's when we changed vendors, and we had a zero premium. How could we have a zero premium for medical costs only? At that point in time, by the way, we remained self-insured for prescription drugs. And the reason is Medicare Advantage leverages federal funds, and it brings federal funds to the carrier and incents the carrier to manage the care of the people who are part of the plan and to helpfully keep their health conditions in check and therefore less costly. And so with Aetna, we had a $0 premium for 22-23. We went out to procure again for 2024. That procurement resulted in us going back to Anthem. And we had a zero premium with Aetna, as I mentioned. And that premium held until right now we're working with Anthem on an adjustment of the premium, because what happens every year is the federal government comes out with a declaration of how much they're going to be funding carriers for Medicare Advantage. In this case, it's called a call letter. And so every year the rates adjust, and right now we are working, moving along your chart, to adjust our rates for the call letter that was just released by the federal government in April of 2025. And so the reason I want to point that out is as we move to the next slide and talk about the actual funding, you're going to see how that call letter raised our costs, but how we have a solution that we would like to present to you that will help us mitigate those costs.
I'll point out a couple of things. If you look at the chart, normally this would look like steps, like a giant staircase, right? It's healthcare. It goes up. The fact that it doesn't look like a giant staircase in the bracket is the giant savings to state government that you saw, and it's a lot of money. So what is smoothing, and what are we doing now? By switching from a fully insured product to from a self-insured product to a fully insured product, we have reserves that you have to maintain when you're self-insured that you don't have to maintain when you're fully insured. And the question is, what do you do with those reserves? You spend them down because you shouldn't be hanging on to cash. We worked with our consultant, Siegel, to talk about ways people do this. You don't want to create fiscal cliffs, right? Where your premiums one day are like $10 and the next day they're 90 or something like that. So we're taking the premium and over a 10-year smoothing cycle, we're smoothing the curve. And so because of the smoothing curve would start this year, and because based on the call letter that just came out, we didn't have this information before. We knew a call letter was coming out. Who knows what's in it? I mean, if I'm honest, there's still a great deal of uncertainty about what might or might not happen in Washington. I think everyone's sort of aware of that. So we're going to move cautiously over time and smooth. What it results in, the numbers that you see on slide 7, you can see that we're using $6 million a year, 6.6, then 6.3. It'll go down a little more, a little more, a little more, and we'll smooth over time. That ends up being a benefit in fiscal 26 and relatively flat in fiscal 27. It's a change we presented to the House and that they adopted, was not in the governor's budget because we didn't know. And so that's where that is. Moving ahead, spending by division, moving to slide 8. This is the comparison of 24, 25, 26, 27, and showing you what happened different in the House. I call out an anomaly in fiscal 24. I shouldn't say I call it out. Sherry did the slide. So Sherry called out the anomaly. We bought Granite Place. We're not going to buy Granite Place every year. So we don't expect to spend $21 million every year. So I subtracted that out. As you can see in the governor's phase, we were down a bit, and this is by division, but I'll show you functional categories in a second. In the House, apparently unimpressed by my first slide with the graph going down, they asked us to go down even more. They apparently subscribed to the Senator Gray school of, what have you done for me lately? And so that happened in the House phase. That's where we are. So what did happen? If you look at slide 9 is expenses by category. So you can see what are we spending money on, what are we not spending money on, what went up, what went down. At the top is salary and benefits and what happened to them. I'm going to talk to you about the positions that were unfunded in our budget. And the significant decrease in the workforce that results in. Current expenses went down a little bit, but not much. Rent leases other than state. Granite Place lease is on books. The DOP lease went up a little bit. It's not a big part of our budget. Utilities seem to be going down, knock on wood. Let's hope it stays that way. Transfers to DOIT have come down a little bit, but not a lot. There's a little bit of equipment in our budget. You may know that the Annex is a giant construction zone. I'm sorry if they're moving your office there in July. I don't know which one of you, but it's a little loud, but you'll get used to it. Every time I hear the noise, I say, progress. And then I get out of meetings because they can't hear. So that's a good thing. Technology, the cost of we're upgrading the state's ERP, the Infor system. The most big significant upgrade since the most significant upgrade when it went in 2009, 2010, and going to the cloud, it's more expensive. Everything in IT, let's hope nobody lobbies for Microsoft behind me, but everything in IT goes up because that's what they do to you, and there's no way around it, sadly. Contract and maintenance, this is plant and property. Maintenance goes up a little bit, and that's a push me, pull you with positions. Paid family leave, we can talk about in a minute, but that accounting unit was zeroed out, so we're not hiring any consultants to do anything of any sort. And the thing will just sort of exist, and MetLife will write it out on its blimp. Property and casualty insurance went up. It's not a huge expense, but I do call it out because it shows. Insurance is going up everywhere. It's something to do with hurricanes. And we don't really have a choice. We actually looked at just being self-insured on buildings. And the problem is you need some kind of stop loss because the one thing that'll happen is we'll stop having insurance and then there'll be a tornado. And we'll have to replace the whole campus and somebody will say, well, shouldn't you have had something? This amounts to stop loss is what it amounts to. I think our deductible is $1 million on that policy. And then everything else, down 31%, just to give you an idea that we're not padding anything. And then retiree health, you can see below where we end up. that's what we do by function. If you go to slide 10, I'm going to talk about the biggest hit we took. And it's positions. We are a relatively fragile department that has never been significantly staffed because we're generally funded. That's how you know, right? If you're non-general fund, you probably got enough staff. If you're general fund, you probably don't. And but we've had an internal hiring freeze since July because I could do math and read revenue numbers. And so we didn't want to fill positions in people we would have to lay off, and no good deed goes unpunished. Those positions are mostly eliminated. Divided into three groups: plant and property. Very few unfunded positions because the way plant and property works, those costs are going down. What we're charging other agencies went down, but you do some work with people, right? So, you know, we call Bruce. Bruce happens to do the annex. I like Bruce a lot. He fixes everything. But Bruce can fix almost anything, but not quite. You do some work with contracts, and it's a balance, right? You do some of each. And so what we did in the budget is try to balance that out. And Bruce is very handy to have because he's here and he can do a lot of things. So we want to make sure we keep him as opposed to a carpentry contract, which only does carpentry. So there's that. Risk is no general funds, risk and benefits. So there's that. But if you look at it, the rest of it, 28 of the 30 positions, or 15%, is the operations of a central service agency at the state. I'm going to ask you for some of them back in a minute.
The only other thing I wanted to add, just to give you a reference, is that of our total budget excluding retiree health, salary and benefits make up 70% of our budget. You know, for the most part, we're not running programs. It's all staffing. So that's where, when there has to be reductions in our budget, it comes from people and positions. So because of 70% of our budget is staffing, that's where all those reductions happened in both the governor and the House phase.
So slide 11 is a fairly comprehensive look at paid family leave and what happened. I'm going to leave it here as a reference document for you. And if anyone wants to talk about it, they can ask about it, but it's a reference document. So just so you know what happened. Slide 12 is labeled Senate challenges. These are 5 asks, right? You were waiting for that, weren't you, Senator Gray?
No.
This is a what can you do for me lately? I'm sorry. The biggest question I'm going to ask you, because we're an agency that runs on people and we serve other agencies. We run without 30 positions, everything is slower. Everything is not going to happen. Contracts are going to be delayed. Payroll's not going to be delayed because you can't delay payroll. They're just going to be overworked. And I want to ask for 5 of the positions back, and this is what the cost is. We would still be eliminating 25 positions, which is a lot. But if you said to yourself, you know, 25 is good. He doesn't have to get to 30. That's how much that cost would be. That's my number one ask, because it really all is about people. 4 other things, but some of them have costs, some don't. One is that we are upgrading New Hampshire First, the system, the enterprise platform that runs everything in state government. Payroll, HR, budget, finance, purchasing, supply chain, everything. It is it's called an ERP. I wanted to ask for $1.5 million a year for that. To cover, you know, there are fixed costs and there are variable costs with any contract of this sort. And there are things that come up. There are things that you're doing and little things, right? Not little things, but can we put cash management at Treasury also on the system instead of in a subsystem? And is now the time to do it or not? And the various costs that go up with the changes that the system makes and how we operate. That's probably the second biggest thing, just because it's such a giant moving target. The other things don't necessarily cost money. They don't cost money. The first one is we have money for part of that ERP system that we are spending. Our go live is not before July 1st. It's likely February 1st. And all I'm asking is that the lapse of that program be extended from June 30th, 2025 to June 30th, 2027. Same money already appropriated, just I have more time to spend it because the system's not up yet. Number 4 is to make retiree health non-lapsing. As most of you know, retiree health is non-lapsing in year 1, but it lapses at the end of the 2nd year. This is not a cost. This is not anything except to say that money that we appropriate for healthcare, that we spend on healthcare, is still going to be spent on healthcare, but we're acknowledging that the changes that affect that are not operational changes we make for the most part. There are changes in the healthcare marketplace, which we have very little impact on. A state of 0.5% of the country's population does not move the market one way or another. And most decisions in Washington affect what we do. And this would allow slightly greater flexibility. It's not going to solve a giant problem. It will allow risk and benefits greater flexibility to run that program, but with money that's meant for that program and not anything else. And the number 5 is to ask you, as we go through the budget and sort out the House changes, if you will allow Sherry to make technical changes within our budget and work with the LBA to make them to this position, not this position, this accounting unit, not this accounting unit, and just to make sure the money is all in the right place with no cost of any kind, but just to make like technical corrections where the position number is wrong, or we're budgeting $182,000 of general funds here and $62,000 there, and we want to tweak $12,000 here because of where the costs are going to come down. Those changes are being analyzed right now, and it will save us having to make them later with not a dime of cost difference to you.
LBA can write me amendments for 3, 4, and 5. That doesn't mean you'll get them, that just means that the amendment will be out there for a discussion.
No, it's a great start, though. It's better than don't write me an amendment for 3. Thank you very much. And then the final slide, 13, beyond that, there's slides which are an appendix for you, an overview of our major tasks of our divisions. But I'm closing with the way I started, which is that we went down a lot. And even though 27 is a little higher, we're still down from 19 to 27. We'll still be down 7% in our spending. So we're not going nuts. And with that, any questions?
Questions? Senator Rosenberg.
2 questions. First one is about the website for paid family and medical leave. That seems to be the only way that individuals might really learn about this program, and that segment's been growing, although slowly. I see you're not asking to reinstate that position, but would you be able to estimate the cost of hiring a company to manage that?
Cassie, do you have a?
When I look at the website, I agree with you. I think it's critical that we keep it up and up to date. It is up to date, and the content, I think, is quite rich and very informative. So what we need to be able to do is A, maintain the platform, right, and B, update it as appropriate. The most important updates in my estimation, and I did work with a team with DAS and NHES on implementation, is making sure that when we have annual individual open enrollment for participation in the individual plan, that's the people whose employer do not sponsor it, but they can go to the individual market and pay for it themselves, that we're promoting that 60-day open enrollment period. And so we're going to do that through using our own staff, both at DAS and DOIT if necessary.
That's fantastic. Could I
Additional questions?
Yes. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Has the department recently looked at combining their pharmaceutical purchasing power with other state-funded plans? And so what comes to mind is Medicaid or the university system or the judicial branch retirees.
So judicial branch is part of our healthcare plan.
Oh,
I would
okay.
say that, which is
So
okay.
not
But
that.
We have for some years, longer than I've been here, maybe a decade or a little more, been part of a public purchasers group through UNH organizes it, and we're the biggest dues payer, although we're getting out of it. But with people like Health Trust, UNH, CCSNH, I think was part of it for a while. But the idea is that the large public payers and to find commonalities of interest. It's never gotten to the point where people were able to identify ways in which we could quasi-merge. And in fact, the group sort of started falling apart. And we're sort of the last one left and in it, which means it's ceasing to exist. And I think the difficulty was that, so we have 14 unions or 15 unions, I keep forgetting because we keep adding and subtracting, but one health plan. We administer one health plan. CCSNH has some statutory ability to join. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, but what they could do is join our health plan, not a combined health plan that we administer multiple different health plans. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles is that the state is unlikely to change how it administers health care radically because it's collectively bargained. And it'd be very difficult to get there. And I think for a lot of the other entities, they're sort of wedded to what they're doing, and they're less likely to be able to jump in. I think if one of those entities in a major way were to look at becoming part of our health plan, it's definitely something we could look at and examine the obstacles. We've done little tiny pieces of it, like the public defender is now part of the state health plan, but they have to pay the costs. We've avoided doing, your nonprofit joins this year and your nonprofit joins next year, and then this year it's the chambers, next year it's the community health centers, and we've avoided that because of the politics involved in it. And you don't want, whoever wins the next election has like 3 friends of theirs jump in, not friends, but you know what I mean. But if a major player were interested in essentially adopting our health plan, we could discuss costs and administration of it. But I don't know, for us right now, we're of a significant size so that for a plan as good as ours is, right? We theoretically, we underpay on salaries, we overpay on benefits, is the legend. We have an economy of scale. We're a really good size for achieving administrative efficiency. So it's not necessarily a benefit to us. Would it be for them? Maybe. But it's something they would have to decide and sort of approach us, and I think we could look at.
One more
Follow-up?
follow-up. Thank you. So I'm looking at 26 and 27, the Medicare expenditures, the Advantage plans is projected to jump quite a bit. Is that based on pharmaceuticals, or is it based on medical, or is it equal?
I don't know that it's equal. I think
Well, first of all, it
both.
represents a jump up from a 0 premium, right? And it's the combined experience, medical and pharmacy.
And I would say to you that it's not that we're experiencing flat medical expenditures and increasing pharmacy expenditures. It is true, though, that for the over 65 population, pharmacy tends to be a significant cost driver. But we're seeing increases, like there's not one thing that you can point to, with the exception maybe of GLP-1s, the anti-obesity medication. But other than that, it's sort of ongoing. And frankly, as some of our biggest spending drugs from 5 or 6 years ago go generic, that's helpful. It's just that the drug companies are always one step ahead on the spend.
We can talk more about it offline. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. Oh, Senator Lang.
Cassie, would you know about the Drug Affordability Board?
I know a little.
So my question is, since the formation of the Drug Affordability Board, have we actually seen prescription drug prices for New Hampshire citizens through that program actually go down?
No.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions now, we'll get the child advocate up.
Good afternoon, Cassandra Sanchez, Child Advocate.
Attorney Lissa Massio, I'm the Associate Child Advocate.
The Office of the Child Advocate is an independent, impartial state agency, and we are mandated to oversee child-serving executive branch agencies and any entity that contracts or certifies with them to provide direct services to children and families. Within our role, we do review all restraint and seclusion of children in care, and we also go and spend time on the road visiting with children, particularly those placed in residential facilities at our youth detention center, as well as Hampstead Hospital, to provide not only support to the children there at those facilities, but also to provide adequate support to the staff to ensure that they can then provide appropriate care to the children at those facilities. Here I have shared with you in our PowerPoint a breakdown of our office staffing on page 2. At this time, there are no vacancies. We are fully staffed. We do have in the budget the unfunding of that final position, the office coordinator, that remains in our budget to date. The following page, page 3, shares some data from our most recent annual report. I did also send that out via email for you if you have time to look a bit further into all of the work that the office is able to accomplish in a year's time. On slide 4, it shows the comp time earned between different staff in the office. And what this illustrates is the amount of extra time staff are committing to the work to ensure that we are providing the adequate reviews of the restraints and seclusions of the callers that are coming to our office with concerns for children, and ensuring that children are receiving adequate care. So quite a bit of extra time put in to ensure that we are providing a very thorough review of all of those. On page 5, it shares the current open inquiries by staff member. And as you can see, so for us, these are very high numbers. We're having almost up to 50 by the legal aid and in the 40s for both assistant child advocates, myself also carrying a caseload. We continue to get an influx of calls into the Office of Concerns for Children's Care, and those cases then remain open longer because they require us to intervene and assist and advocate on behalf of those children. So this is the highest our caseloads have been since my time in the office, and they continue to grow over time. And the critical incidents at the bottom as well are reports that are open for review by the office, and again, ensuring that staff take the time to independently review each and every single one of those, which leads back to some of that overtime that you saw there. What we have in our prioritized needs ties back into the charts that I had just shown you prior, with the first one being a reclassification of positions. At this time, I oversee and supervise all staff in the office with the exception of one. And so what we are looking to do, and what the governor had added to her budget for our office, is this reclassification, which would reclassify the associate child advocate position from right now primarily focused on legislative work to focusing on supporting the work in the office staff. So supervising some of those that are managing the high caseloads and ensuring that they're getting the attention and time that they need to move along quickly. And with that as well, in the reclassification, it would include the legal aid being restructured to a case aid supervisor and overseeing those incidents that are entered in those reviews. And by having that person as a supervisor, it should lead to more timely reviews and closing out of the many incidents that we review. Our additional prioritized needs include additional assistant child advocates and case aid, particularly due to the high caseloads currently in the office, and our ability to be able to keep up and respond to those timely. and other line items, including general operating expenses. If you flip to page 11, you will see that page 11 and 12 show the efficiency budget for fiscal year 26 and 27, and the budget that was submitted, 93% of that is salaries and benefits for staff members. So very, very small operating budget there, which is why we had indicated in that final prioritized need other line items, because to be able to meet the salaries, even with cutting that one position, it brought our operating budget down to a very slim margin, which would reduce our ability to be able to travel both in-state and out-of-state to see children. I am open for any questions.
Questions from the censors? All right, in the House budget, you are?
In the House budget, we have been eliminated completely as an office, as well as in House Bill 1, striking each position under the office statute.
Okay. Seeing no questions? There's one.
So just walk me through, whether it's a hypothetical or otherwise, a type of case that you investigate that nobody else would investigate, or and what the outcomes look like real quick. So I understand a little better what your office does. I see the case numbers and everything else, but I really want to understand exactly what your office does.
Absolutely. So a lot of our time is spent overseeing the residential facilities and the children that are there. So we may receive a call from a family caregiver who has a child placed in residential. It could also be a child protection social worker from DCYF calling our office with concern for a child on their caseload, and they will share the concerns that they have. We have direct access into the DCYF record. So the first thing we would do is go into that record and read everything pertaining to that case to understand what brought that child to the point in time that we are now talking about now. After that initial review, we determine whether we need to reach out directly to DCYF to ask them to take particular action steps to advocate for the best interests of that child, or we may have to go directly out to the facility. So if it is concern about the care a child's receiving at a facility, we will send staff out to go in person to do a complete tour of the facility, to meet with staff, to meet with the child, to talk to the child confidentially, and to then bring that information back to the office and digest how we're going to respond to that particular concern. It could then be a larger follow-up meeting with the residential facility about their policies and practices, whether they are aligned with current state laws, and as well as the certification rules that they are to follow. So many a times it does get to that level where we sit down with leadership from a facility and we're informing them about the laws and policies that exist that they should be following, and we are advocating for changes for that particular singular child. But then we also do larger systemic work. If we see a trend of those things happening in a short period of time, we bring key collaterals together to the table to talk about larger ways in which we can impact the system to keep that from happening to children in the future.
Follow up?
So again, I'm looking for something tangible. Give me for example, we did, and give me something that changed the outcome or changed just a good, without names or anything else, but just an example of a case you investigated, that result, and why you were brought in and what the result was.
Yes, so one that made many headlines involved 2 children placed out of state, and because of our advocacy, those 2 children who were in a very harmful situation, very big liability to the state with the harm that they were receiving in the residential facility, we advocated tirelessly to get those children to return to New Hampshire and be placed in facilities that were adequately meeting their needs and that were following the laws of New Hampshire, which the facility out of state was not doing.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Housing Appeals Board. You need a red light or we can't hear you.
Hi,
Or the
sorry.
people out on the internet can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's important
Not by
too.
design.
It seems 20 copies effectively killed my printer, so I.
Whatever you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the committee. My name is David
Hold
Rogers.
the mic toward you, please.
I'm sorry. My name is David Rogers. I'm the chairman of the Housing Appeals Board. With me today is our board clerk, Elizabeth Menard. I'm going to defer to Elizabeth to present today. She has done yeoman's work over the last several weeks putting together a package for your review, and I appreciate your attention. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Elizabeth Menard, Housing Appeals Board Clerk. It's a pleasure to come before the committee today, and thank you for your time. I do note that we have 5 minutes, and so I will try to be brief. I think that's appropriate. It's about a minute for every year we've been an agency. So, okay, so as Commissioner Arlinghouse mentioned during his presentation, we are one of those agencies that has faced some trouble this year at the House in terms of our budget, and to be blunt, we're on the chopping block. So we are administratively attached to the Department of Administrative Services. Just as a brief background, the Housing Appeals Board was enacted in 2020 as a small government approach to addressing some of the issues at the local level that were happening, that were delaying, processes for developments and projects to go forward. So we've been in operation since January of 2021, and in that time, we've heard about 134 appeals. These appeals touch quite a different range of matters, zoning and planning matters. We've heard cases, everything from we need a side setback variance for, a driveway or a garage, and, all the way up to some really significant cases such as the Chelmsford Hooksett properties and Hooksett. So when we talk about the Housing Appeals Board and we talk about the value that it offers to the state, we try to talk about it in a way that is sort of common sense. It's not a cost per case analysis that really demonstrates to the New Hampshire citizen what the value is that's offered. When we talk about the Housing Appeals Board, we typically talk about the 3 E's. So that looks like that: expertise, efficiency, and expense. When you come to the Housing Appeals Board, you have 3 administrative judges who bring 3 different backgrounds across 3 different disciplines that are valuable at every step of a land use process. So we have, for instance, sitting next to me, our chairman is an attorney. He's he's been in the land use and zoning world, if you will, for about 12 years. He's sat on at least 3 different boards in Salem and Hooksett and Hillsborough. He worked for the state as a presiding officer for the Administrative Appeals Unit. We're also very pleased to have our professional engineer and licensed land surveyor, who's sitting behind me in the back, Ed Rogers. He's been on the board since 2021 with me, and he was with me in 2024 alone when we were down 2 board members. So, and then we were very pleased to welcome our 3rd board member, Stephanie Verdile, who brings 24 years of extensive experience in municipal land use planning, and most recently coming from the New Hampshire OPD. So what people can expect to receive when they come to the Housing Appeals Board is a really comprehensive, well-rounded decision. When you go to the Superior Court, you have 1 judge who may or may not have the experience in these land use matters to make a fair and comprehensive determination. And not to suggest that that's always the case. As we know, we have now, last year, the legislature passed a land use review docket. Judge Class, former attorney member on the Housing Appeals Board, now presides over that docket. And so, you have an experienced judge there. But what you're getting is just another iteration of Superior Court. A Superior Court, by any other name, is a Superior Court. Land use review docket falls within that category. In 2020, the Housing Appeals Board was enacted to be an alternative to the Superior Court. And that's what it does. And that's what it has been doing. It offers an alternative avenue for the average person in New Hampshire to come before a board of 3 administrative judges who are going to be able to have the legal, technical, and practical expertise to look at their land use matters and make a fair and comprehensive decision. You'll excuse me. The Housing Appeals Board runs on a very, very slim, bare bones budget. About 89% of our FY26 funds are salary and benefits, and about 90% of our FY27 funds are salary and benefits. The rest is allocated for discretionary and non-discretionary operational expenses. We have recently procured a case management system that's allowing us to go paperless. This will streamline the application process, the filing process for applicants who want to come before our board. One thing that's been, I think, probably on the forefront of our minds as we've navigated this budget process this year with the troublesome sort of challenges it's presented, being solely that we have no budget and we're eliminated and all of our positions are abolished, is that the state's budget should reflect its priorities. And I listened to Governor Ayotte's remarks during her inaugural address, and I've been keeping an eye on some of the proposals that have been going around the legislature right now to streamline zoning and planning board processes at the local level. We expect that as these changes are made at the local level, that there are going to be a higher number of appeals being brought forward by citizens. When you make changes to local zoning or planning processes, the applicants have to navigate this process, as do the municipalities. The Housing Appeals Board continues to be a tool in the state's toolbox to address these housing issues for the citizens. And housing, as we know, is something that it's an issue that reaches across the aisle. The Housing Appeals Board for the past 4 years has benefited from bipartisan support in both the public and the private sectors. We've received positive feedback from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. We've received positive feedback from many attorneys over the past 4 years on both sides. So this is an avenue that New Hampshire did not have in prior years. And when the minds who created this Housing Appeals Board sat down and did so, they intended it to be a light touch, small government approach for the average citizen to be able to access. Superior court processes in the past were lengthy, they were expensive. It caused the risk to go up for many developers. They would sit in Superior Court for a year or two waiting. And during that time, cost of materials could go up or down. They would lose their contractors. If you come to the Housing Appeals Board, what you get is a decision in approximately 5.33 months. You file your appeal. It's received by me. We process it, and you have a hearing within 90 days. You have a decision within 60 days after that. And even if you do not prevail in that decision as the applicant, you have an opportunity in a more expeditious time frame to go back to the drawing board and try again. We actually, in a recent hearing that we had, you'll forgive me, I forget the case name off the top of my head at this moment, but we had a recent hearing on the merits in one of our appeal matters where the applicant said during his testimony, I could have gone back to my town and spent $600+ to do this all over again, or I could have come to the Housing Appeals Board and spent $250 to get a decision. And that's important. That's just one example of how the Housing Appeals Board is working for the New Hampshire citizens. So what we're really looking at here, yes, I'll wrap up. It's my final remark. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a cost shift. It's all it is. If you take away the Housing Appeals Board and you send these cases over to the Land Use Review docket, you're shifting costs. We still have 3 unclassified employees who are termed out to 2028, 2029, and we have 1 coming up for reappointment who will be reappointed, hopefully, until 2030. So if you cut this board in this upcoming biennium, that's 2 years that you're paying our unclassified board members for no return. So I will rest. I've submitted about probably 40 pages. It'll take some time to read through, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the materials that I've submitted. Thank you for your time.
Before I take questions, just want everybody to know that I have invited the courts to come over to talk to me about alternatives, which could include moving the Housing Appeals Board along with BTLA, along with the Ombudsman, or whatever, under the courts, and then doing something there. So again, just so you know that those conversations will be taking place. Senator Lang.
Just a simple question, timelines. So from the time you file in Superior Court and get out of the land use docket review line or versus the HAB file to decision, what's the differential between those two that the citizens are waiting on?
Certainly, Senator Lang, thank you. So I don't have exact numbers to answer your question, but I do have sort of a general understanding of how that process works. So when an appeal is filed, a land use appeal is filed at the Superior Court, it goes into a general online filing system sort of receptacle, okay, that receives all appeals. There is then a manual step that needs to happen by the administrative officers who work with that system to trigger that appeal to then be sent to Hillsborough Superior Court North to the land use review docket. So there's I expect that there would probably be some delay just in that initial filing time and then the trigger to send the case over to the land use review docket. Following that step, as I understand it, there's, of course, the case has to be entered into the docket. I don't know what the timeline looks like there. And then I believe that from there is the order of notice that goes out and the summons that goes out to the parties. And following that step, of course, there's sheriff service that has to occur, which, as the good senators on this committee understand, the Housing Appeals Board bypasses that sheriff service process entirely. At that point, I believe there's a scheduling conference at some point that's ordered, and from there, I'm not certain what the timeline looks like. Thank you.
Additional question?
Yeah, again, I'm just trying to understand, if a citizen goes before the HAB and files in January, when can they expect a decision as compared to if a citizen files that same exact appeal to the Superior Court, when could they expect a decision?
Sure. Okay, I can speak to that one specifically. So when I receive an appeal, I docket it immediately, either the same day or the next business day, unless of course there's a weekend or a holiday. I'm issuing the notice to defendant out to the municipalities. Following that point, per our statute, RSA 679-6, the municipality is required to file its certified record within that 30-day period. Following receipt of the certified record, and the answer and the appearance that goes along with it, I almost immediately, as soon as I can, it's just me in the office, I will schedule that appeal for a pre-hearing conference and a hearing on the merits for the soonest possible date. RSA 679-6 sets forth that hearings on the merits are to be held within 90 days that an appeal is filed. So in theory, appeal filed, 30 days later, certified record is received. And then so that's 30 out of those 90 days. So it's about 60 days remaining, give or take. Within that 60-day window, you're being scheduled for a pre-hearing conference and a hearing on the merits. We are actually looking at ways of streamlining that process. It has just sort of been the historical standard that we have scheduled these pre-hearing conferences and staggered them about 2 weeks prior to the hearing on the merits. But as I just stated, and I apologize for being redundant, we are looking at ways to streamline that so that we can bump that hearing on the merits up even closer to the date when the certified record is received. So you have your hearing on the merits within that 90-day window, and then within 2 months of that date, you can expect to receive your decision.
So the HAB is 5 months roughly.
Historically, 5.33 months.
And that, ma'am, Mr. Chair, again, so we know it's 5 months for the HAB. Do we know what that same timeline, is it a year, 18 months, is it 6 months for Superior Court? Do we have a general idea of what to get off the land use docket takes?
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject, I've been a practicing attorney in New Hampshire since 1988, and I spent a lot of time in the Superior Court during my years of private practice. Without knowing the specific details, it's longer than 5 to 6 months, I can pretty much assure you, and a lot of that is front-loaded with service by a sheriff and so on. So there may be 3, 4, 5 months that passes before the land use docket gets it for actual hearing process, whether it's a pre-hearing conference, scheduling conference, or a final hearing on the merits. I don't, again, know the specific dates, but it's longer. I can pretty much assure you by a factor of at least 3 or 4 months, more than likely. The other competing factor at the Superior Court, as you're probably well aware, are the criminal docket. That takes precedence over every other civil case, including housing cases. So depending on the demand for hearings in the civil and the criminal matters, civil cases take a hit.
So again, I'm sorry, Mr. Judge, just trying to understand the efficiency again. So it sounded like you said, based on your 5.3 months, there are at least 3 months beyond that minimum. So 8 months, it sounds like we're a similar type of.
I would say 8 to 10 months, and probably worse than that in busy times with the criminal docket.
Thank you.
Senator Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. And following up on Senator Lang's question about individuals filing an appeal with the HAB, what about developers? Would it be faster to get a decision that could lead to more new housing by going to the Housing Appeals Board versus going to Superior Court? And I point out specifically that the court system's had a really big back of the budget cut, which will impact the ability to hear non-criminal cases.
Yes, and Senator, thank you for your question. That is in fact something that we consider, and we are not competing with the criminal dockets or other dockets for that matter. So with developers, frequently it's a cost-driven development. They have materials, they have contractors, they have plans and other things that need to be done. If it's taking a year or 2 to get through the Superior Court versus 5 to 6 months with us, those costs are going to be more static than they would be if it's extended out over time through the Superior Court. That's not to disparage the Superior Court. It certainly has its role, and I think the land use docket is a parallel docket to us. It's not really a competition. They're hearing commercial and industrial cases, which we don't hear. We hear purely housing cases. So we serve a purpose that the Superior Court serves and vice versa. We work in tandem for that. And I think our board is well-suited and well-positioned to handle these sorts of things, and including on both the development, the homeowner, the municipality, all of these various players come in, and we've had support from all of them across the years.
Thank you.
And if I could, Senator, jump on to that very briefly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So very specifically, I can refer you to our attachment number 4 of our submission. We did a very brief analysis as to how many housing units the Housing Appeals Board has actually impacted. And that number is 2,741.
Senator Bertson.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. So if someone takes a case to Superior Court and they get a docket, does that get bumped if the Superior Court gets a criminal case?
Thank you, Senator Birdsall. I would have to say that I can't speak to the specifics of how that system works. And I would just reserve any further comment. I would think that because of the constitutional protections in place that ensure citizens involved in criminal matters have their right to a speedy trial, that there would certainly probably be some delays to land use cases as criminal matters were heard. And to that effect, I've had a conversation with certain personnel over at the Superior Court in Hillsborough North, and they are metering what goes on Judge Class's docket. But there is a certain amount, a percentage of criminal cases that have to go on his docket. It doesn't matter how many land use cases he receives.
Thank you.
And if I may, Senator, thank you for the question. My personal experience as a practicing attorney, again, I've been bumped personally many times, and back when divorce cases were not done in family court, they were done at the Superior Court. If criminal cases came in and needed arraignments or speedier hearings, arraignments typically done at the district court level, but then you bump them up to the Superior Court. the civil docket was the one that suffered because they only had so many hours and so many judges to go around. So it certainly impacts it. Exactly how, I don't know, and I can't say, and that's, nobody can. But it does have an impact because we don't have that same level of competing interests going on in our board. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions right now. You had something you wanted to add? I mean, we are tremendously over our time,
Yes,
so
thank
come
you.
on, let's.
I would
wrap
thank
it
you,
up.
and I'll rest. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Personal appeals.
Mr. Chairman, Senators,
Just a second, please. Unless they call you up as part of their presentation, it's not going to happen. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, I'm Charles Russell. I'm an attorney. I'm the Vice Chair of the Personnel Appeals Board. Commissioner Paula Hurley appears beside me as well. We've put in a submission. Before I get started, I'd say in the sixth paragraph, there's a typo. The next to the last line, it says 50K for 2027. That's only 5K for 2027, as consistent with the spreadsheet attached. The Personnel Appeals Board hears appeals from the state employees who wish to contest certain applications of personnel rules, most commonly disciplinary and termination matters. The board hears on the average 25 to 35 cases per year. Budgetarily, PAB was historically under the Department of Administrative Services in their budget in this current biennium. Per SB 487 2024, the PAB's proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget included staffing and administrative infrastructure costs to establish itself as an independent agency. House Finance Division 1 was able to eliminate the added budget request by proposing the the Public Employee Labor Relations Board provide the PAB with the space and administrative support it needs to function. House Bill 2 amendment contains language authorizing this relationship. The PAB agrees with with this arrangement, and we've spoken with PELRB, and they're on board as well. However, the budget reductions taken were inadvertently applied to certain hardware and software lines that the PAB requested to resolve existing legal issues. Currently, PAB members use personal equipment to conduct PAB business. Both the Attorney General's office as well as IT have recommended we obtain proper state system to conduct its businesses, including a separate email that would be separate from our private emails or business emails. We're requesting an adjustment of $10K in 2026. The cost of modification to PELRB's case management system and for software licenses, and an adjustment with the typo here of $5,000 in 2027 for software licenses to submit this situation. We've handed out our annual report, which it's actually has like 10-year summaries of what we do. It's PAB is certainly quicker than the court system. And we just heard a case that was involved a termination in November. We heard it earlier this month. We've yet to make a decision on it. We schedule pre-hearings probably within 20 to 30 days of being scheduled, of being filed, and ask them how far out they want the case scheduled. They exchange a lot of discovery. The appellants, the employees, as well as the agencies work well together in exchanging information. And our hearings sometimes run a half day to a day. Sometimes we have multiple days. I'll take any questions.
Questions from the senators?
Thank you.
You're all set. Thank you.
Get you back on track.
Special,
Hopefully.
yeah. Advocate for Special Education.
Good afternoon, Kristen Moncharmani, advocate for special education, and my colleague, Tim Lenahan. We have limited time, so we are going to just try to hit some high points. Even as we're passing out this presentation, I'm not intending to read through all of it. Our office was created a few sessions ago by the legislature to address something that it sometimes gets called into question. They were addressing a function that they did not believe existed. I know that I was hearing some testimony before this body by one of the representatives that the Office of the Advocate for Special Education was duplicative, presumably of work that Department of Education does. I would tell you, and part of what we want to talk about today is that it is definitely not duplicative. It is discretionary. What the citizens who came to the legislature to create this office were telling everyone in their testimony, and what's come up in reviews, audits of special education, on which we're spending more than $900 million per year, with 30,000 students in the state served by individualized education plans. Parents were telling the legislature, it is very hard for us, even if our child is identified with a disability, sometimes to get the services that we believe they're entitled to, but we don't know how to ask for them. And the school districts have repeat players who manage these cases, who manage hundreds of cases, and attorneys. A parent might go and say, school's not working for my kid with disabilities, it's going all wrong. Them going to school is miserable, and I don't think anything's happening that's productive. And they might say that over a course of years. And there was not a process in place to take the very complex Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act legislative framework federally and its counterparts at the state or local level and help parents turn that statement of, I know my kid is supposed to get help, it's not working, into the language of the IDEA, the language of an IEP, a language that they could then take to DOE as a complaint and ask for an impartial resolution. I think we have worked collaboratively with the Department of Ed with several counterparts there. They refer cases to us constantly, as to several other state agencies. There are very few people, other than myself and Tim, who are out there on the state level, who are not, private citizens or private attorneys paid by parents. There are very few of us who are out there in IEP meetings, around tables as big as this one in this room, with educators in school districts, trying to ensure that what we're all investing in education and in special education is actually meeting the needs of the students, that the families believe the students are making progress. That's what we do day in and day out. We also provide legislative advice. We've had several legislators call us or email us on specific bills going through to say, what do you think? Tell me more about this. Why? Where our office has been written into several proposals on cost studies and commissions through the legislature in terms of studying the costs of special education and what we understand about why they're escalating. So when I took the position as the first person in this role almost 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago yet, it was with an understanding that there was additional staffing that was both available, approved, and then we went through a 7D process, had other positions approved. They are all unfunded. At the moment, the funding is just for me and for Tim. So I've done two things. One, which I'm not going to read all the way through because I want to be conscious of everyone's time, but on the first page of our presentation, we have the statutory mandate. It's a pretty extensive statute. We are supposed to ensure that services get provided for all students with IEPs in the state to which they're entitled, in addition to several other data and policy tracking initiatives. We've put the references there. Really, I would draw your attention to about 3 pages in, we're making a minimal request understanding where this body is in terms of costs and all of the cost cuts that are happening. If we cannot have any additional funding, I've asked for some shifts in line items because when our budget was prepared, there were, that was not the understanding. The DOIT came to us with numbers understanding additional staff. We had office space understanding additional staff. I would like to move some of those line items just to current expenses where I have some discretion over how we can try to serve as many people as possible. So the first page is a 0 cost increase, but a request that some line items be shifted. Because right now, I have 0 flexibility. We don't even have a current expense line item for the upcoming year that would allow me to buy office supplies. But we could create that. We're happy to give up some offices. We're happy to give up the telecom system and go to Jabber, do all sorts of things that would actually just give us a little bit of flexibility. The next page says requested staffing to fulfill the legislative mandate. So that is what we asked for in our prioritized needs. And it does, you'll see the changes in FY26 and 27 predominantly to classified positions with an increase that would have accommodated about 3.5 additional positions, and then to benefits in those line items. That's what we'd always asked for in prioritized needs, and those budget line items are what would get us to the proposed org chart at the back of this presentation, which had an office of just 5 of us, again, to help talk policy around that $900 million expenditure and to help make sure that the 30,000 kids who have IEPs in the state are getting services that their families agree are beneficial. With that, we'd love to take questions.
From the senators. I think you're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the Commission on Aging. And senators, we're scheduled for a break, but we're not going to take one. So if you need a couple of minutes, please make it short and come back. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Lily Wellington. I am the new Executive Director for the state's Commission on Aging. I am joined here today by Lori Duff, who is the Commission's Chair. We also have members of our Commission sitting behind us. And I'm here today to present to you our budget and some small changes that we've made. But first I wanted to start by saying that the Commission was established in 2019. It began meeting in 2020 with the primary charge of advising the Governor and the General Court on critical policies and planning related to aging in New Hampshire. I think everybody in this room can acknowledge that we understand there's a demographic shift that's occurring. It's across the country, but also in the state of New Hampshire. Currently, we have 20% of our population is 65 or older. This represents a permanent demographic shift. So our primary goal right now is to try and think about how we can plan for the New Hampshire that is tomorrow. So when we look at this, we think of this as a really smart value for the state. And part of the reason for that is that the Commission members are themselves, for the most part, volunteers. So we're able to leverage really expert volunteer wisdom. We have retired DHHS commissioners, we have acting reps, state senator, and we're able to take that key volunteer power and partner with 8 state agencies who serve on the Commission. So that power can then create ideas that are proof positive of how we're going to advise on policy and planning for the state. We know because of the state agency involvement that we're going to be able to actually implement some of the advised planning and policy. So in the packet in front of you, I also wanted to highlight some of our current projects. So right now we have 2 ARPA-funded projects. One is a community transportation needs assessment. This is really key for New Hampshire. We currently have over 50 potential revenue streams coming into the state for transportation. So the goal here is to really look at the entire state and understand what's coming in
And how can we leverage that to create better systems for transportation for folks in various geographic regions of the state? That's ongoing. It will go into the next biennium. We also have a multi-sector plan for aging. Again, that is something that we'll look at where we're going to be 10 years down the line, a 10-year blueprint for the state. And then I want to speak specifically about some of the changes to our budget. So I wanted to include the full budget for the commission. So that's on page, I believe it's page 3. So you can see that we're a very small agency. So for the biennium, our total budget is under $500,000. So our major changes that we have put in, we were able to reduce costs in a personnel line item, and that amounts to a 12% reduction from the governor's budget. We were also able to reduce that line item in FY27, which is an 11% savings. So what we know is that the governor prioritized the Commission on Aging in her budget. And so we're hopeful that you will also share that same sentiment and support the commission.
Questions from the senators? Senator Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if we can keep elders in their communities, would we also be maybe lessening the strain on nursing homes and the Medicaid budget and also our hospitals?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
Absolutely. So if we look at our long-term services and supports in the state, we know that it is far less expensive to stay at home, to age in place, or to even age in community. And that can look like a lot of different things, right? So sometimes people can't maintain their home, but they can move to a smaller home, they can move to manufactured housing, they can move to senior apartments. And we know that providing those services in home is exponentially less expensive than hospital level of care or nursing home care. And we also know that there aren't enough resources to go around when it comes to nursing home beds. So there's a vested interest, I think, for the state in making sure that people can primarily also do what they want, which is over 90% of folks who are age 65 and above would like to age in their community. So respecting, I think, what citizens want, also factoring in that this is, again, exponentially less expensive. And then looking at what we need to change at the state level to make that more possible and feasible.
Additional questions? Follow-up?
I mean, given that the counties are responsible for long-term care, could we also look at keeping people in their homes or in congregate living or something that is not Medicaid paid for? Could we look at that as saving property taxpayer money?
Yeah, I think that there's,
I asked that because
yeah.
we're the finance committee.
Yes, yes. And I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And I think that the multi-sector plan for aging that we are now in, we have momentum around, it is really going to help answer some of those questions around what are the models that would be the most feasible and applicable to New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing no additional questions, thank you very much. And conservation land. When
Can
you're
you hear
ready.
me? Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charlotte Harding, and I'm the interim director of the Conservation Land Stewardship Program. CLSP is a dedicated monitoring and stewardship program with the mission of protecting conservation interests, which the state of New Hampshire has invested in. We work to ensure that the state is upholding its legal obligation as grantee holder of conservation interests. Our program is funded through two funding sources. Most of our funding, 87%, comes from an endowment held at Treasury and administered by the Council on Resources and Development. The other source is through a biennial contract that we have with the Fish and Game Department for monitoring of additional conservation interests. Our program does not receive any general funds. The differences between the fiscal year 24 actuals and our adjusted authorized fiscal year 25 figures are primarily driven by indirect costs, being the statewide cost allocation program and due to special payments that were associated with the retirement of the former program director. There are no changes proposed to our fiscal year 26-27 operating budget as passed by the House. And I welcome your questions now or offline.
Senator Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
So Fish and Game Director Simic has requested that we consider moving your program over to Fish and Game, feeling it's more of an appropriate house than it is under DAS.
Yeah.
Just would like you to give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we support Fish and Game's proposal to move the authority for monitoring of LCIP conservation interests and non-LCIP conservation interests over to the Fish and Game Department. There would not necessarily be any big fiscal implications to the move, but it would certainly be beneficial to work more closely with Fish and Game as we are monitoring their properties. The benefits would be especially they'd be especially realized, especially when we are working with potential issues found on conservation properties. We would have more opportunities to collaborate with their lands team. We would have access to to Fish and Game's attorney who has been working in the land conservation realm for a long time. We also would potentially have better connections to conservation officers who work for Fish and Game. So I see a lot of benefits for our program as well as some mutual benefits for Fish and Game.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Governor's office. So you've got the senators fresh right off a break, right? That was
Mr. Chair, your definition of break and mine differ.
I turned the mic off. Back on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Senators. My name is James Gary. I'm Governor Ayotte's Director of Policy and Finance. And as you may know, the governor's office in New Hampshire is one of the smallest governor's office in the nation, both in terms of people and in budget. And you may say to yourself, well, New Hampshire is a small state, so naturally it's small. But in New Hampshire, obviously, we have the same issues that other states have, and we have the same departments to deal with, and again, the same things coming from Washington that we have to deal with in the larger states. But what we have that they don't have is 424 legislators to deal with. I think we're 424. The next state, I had to look this up, was Pennsylvania, 253. So when any new governor would come in, you would think that the new governor would want to staff up the office to make sure they hit the ground running. But as Governor Sununu, the first governor I worked for, told me, is that the governor's office is run very fiscally conservatively, and they really set the example for other state agencies to follow. And this is not just a Republican thing or a Governor Sununu thing, but it's been bipartisan. Certainly Governor Hassens and Lynch did the exact same thing. And I'm happy to tell you that Governor Ayotte is going to continue that tradition. There is no new increase to staff. There is no pay raises. In fact, the governor's recommended budget is cut 2.6%. As you can see from the handout here, I have 3 pages. The first is the Executive Department of the Governor's Office budget. The second is what is commonly known as the Drug Czar budget, which is the Office of Substance Use Disorders and Behavioral Health. And then the third is just a combination of the two. As you can see, we're a people-driven office. A huge percentage of our budget is driven by personnel. We have 1 unclassified personnel, which is the governor, and the rest are non-classified. Currently, the governor has a staff of about 16 people. One thing I do want to mention is that the House put what we believe is the first time in the history of New Hampshire, a $50,000 back of the budget cut on the governor's office, which we do not support. But with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. I could say we're in a similar situation with the legislature because they did that to you too.
Questions from the senators? I have a question. Did you hear my remarks from the fiscal committee about some of the spending in the other departments? Certainly, if you did not, call my office and I'd like to go over them with you because...
I would love to talk to you about that.
All right.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
All right. Department of Business and Economic Affairs.
Good afternoon. I'll do my best to be brief today. Just as a quick reminder, well, first of all, I'm Commissioner Taylor Caswell, Commissioner of Business and Economic Affairs. Our department is in its 7th year of existence. As a quick reminder, we have 3 main divisions: the Division of Economic Development, the Division of Travel and Tourism Development, and the Division of Planning and Community Development. We also operate through our Bureau of Visitor Services, the 12 state welcome centers and rest areas around the state that are owned by DOT. We operate them under a contract, an MOU through Department of Transportation. I don't have a lot of significant requests today. I think the House-passed version of the bill met the standards set by Governor Ayotte in her budget for particularly our travel and tourism marketing work that is done through the department, which really is aimed at generating revenue through the meals and rentals tax, which we have successfully done over the last 7 years. The rest of our operation is fairly austere, I would say. Within our Division of Planning and Community Development, we have 2 ARPA-related programs. The broadband expansion efforts for the state are run through that division, as well as the Invest New Hampshire housing program are also located there. The 2 requests that I do have that are in your packet there really are to do 2 things. One is under the Bureau of Visitor Services for the Welcome Centers. An early version of HB1 and HB2 passed by House Finance Committee did include some cuts to that program, and they made some there was an additional provision that specifically cut out individual employment position numbers. The full House on the House floor restored those funds, but did not also remove that provision that removes the positions. So we would request that, assuming that the funding levels maintain some level of consistency to the House, that those position numbers be eliminated from the budget, the reduction. The second one relates to our Housing Champions program, which is a program that the legislature set up about 3 or 4 years ago to effectively build a good housekeeping seal of approval that municipalities could apply for that would result in certain financial and other benefits to those communities as it relates to housing development, particularly workforce housing development. there was a provision added in House Finance Committee to decline a request from the governor to allow those funds to lapse for an additional year. The purpose of that is that we are on the brink right now of doing an award round for the Housing Champions program. I expect that we will spend all of that money, but there could be some that is left over. And if that were the case, we would like to be able to have an additional year to be able to spend those funds, since it will be most likely some of the few funds that would be available to municipalities on the housing issue from the state, at least for the next 2 years. So those would be my only two substantial requests, and anything else, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for taking my question. Not surprisingly, my question is about the Small Business Development Corporation. And I know the House basically flat funded it at current levels, which is good, but
If Mr. Gray wants to come up, or whomever, we've got a
is she
chair
there?
there.
Oh, she's there.
Why don't you come up and
There's a,
sit in the LBA seat there for right now?
and my specific question is that we are not able to any longer have business advisors in the North Country. And given that we have a position that Coas County is a distressed economy, what would it mean if we were able to put a little bit of money in so that you could hire back a counselor or an advisor for up there?
Hit the red button.
Hi, thank you very much. Liz Gray, I'm the State Director for the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center, just for the record. It's nice to see you, Commissioner. Senator Rosenwald, as you had mentioned, right now we do not have funding in our budget. We lost the Northern Border Regional Commission grant that had funded 2 full-time positions in the North Country. So that's Coas and Carroll, also Cheshire and Sullivan counties were covered by the NBRC grant. If there was additional funding to be able to support the addition of advisors, we would without a doubt put that directly into bringing back 1 or 2 full-time advisors in the North Country, because I agree, it is one of those distressed counties, and we without a doubt need additional support there.
Could you speak about the impact on business that could have?
Thank you. 1 full-time business advisor supports roughly 250 clients per year. And right now, as you can see in our impact report, we've had a pretty remarkable year. We served 1,910 small businesses across the state. And with that, we were able to help them bring in quite, I think, $19 million in additional capital, as well as support 6,500 jobs within their businesses. I think bringing into the North Country again, we'll be able to have that person within the communities in the region to be able to connect with local resource partners in the region to support them.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Any additional comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I think we were a couple short.
I got this folder's there, I'll bring it right over.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They passed them out the other side.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So Ennis, Senate President, and Senator.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Quinn. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Safety. Joining me here today is Amy Newberry, our Director of Administration. We appreciate the opportunity to present the House-approved FY26 and 27 budget for the Department of Safety. At the outset, I'd like to thank the House Finance Chair Keith Erf, Division II Chairman, and all the members of Division II for your thoughtful engagement and productive discussions throughout our budget work sessions. The mission of the Department of Safety is to continually enhance the safety, security, and quality of life in New Hampshire through professional, collaborative, and innovative services. Our department is comprised of 7 divisions, each with its own public safety mandate and unique funding source. I'm honored to lead a dedicated team of professionals, and I take great pride in the work that each division does every day to deliver critical public safety services across the state. As you are aware, the demand for public safety services continues to grow statewide. This includes emerging threats, particularly those affecting our schools, which require new strategies and stronger collaboration among our highly trained 911 communicators, law enforcement officers, dispatchers, first responders, and school safety personnel. The recent increase in deadly fires and carbon monoxide incidents further underscores the importance of maintaining a highly trained and well-equipped fire service. Sustaining this level of service comes at a cost. Rising salary and benefit obligations, essential equipment replacement, and an increasing reliance on IT infrastructure have all contributed to the overall cost growth, even to maintain current service levels. The Division of Motor Vehicles is a prime example of this balance between cost and service. The DMV continues to serve hundreds of thousands of granted staters each year with an unwavering focus on providing excellent customer service. We're also making important strides to modernize systems, expand online services, and meet the growing needs and expectations of our residents, all while maintaining operational efficiency and accountability. In developing this budget, we adhered closely to our strategic plan. We ensured that our core goals remained central while recognizing the financial constraints and operational challenges ahead. Expectations were clearly set across all divisions, guided by performance metrics that help identify evolving needs. Despite these challenges, our team has continued to deliver essential services with limited resources. Further reductions to our budget would have a measurable impact on public safety across New Hampshire. At this time, Director Amy Newberry will provide a financial overview of each division, followed by a discussion on key outstanding items for the committee's consideration. We welcome your questions and look forward to the conversation. Amy?
Thank you, Commissioner, and good afternoon, everyone. You should have 2 packets. There are 2 PowerPoints, one marked as Part 1 and the other as Part 2. In Part 1, you'll have an overview of the department, each of the divisions, the financials, organizational charts, program service delivery, and the reach into all of New Hampshire communities. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in this PowerPoint today, just a brief overview of the financials in each division. I'm largely going to spend most of the time on Part 2, which is our requested actions. These are items that are kind of left over from the House phase, which we're looking for your insight with. So let's begin with Part 1 and the presentation with the overview of the Department of Safety and its structure, which is outlined on page 3 of your packet. As the Commissioner highlighted, the department is composed of 7 divisions, each with its own unique funding streams. The structure naturally lends itself to a division-by-division approach, which we'll be following today. Turning to page 4, you'll see a summary of the department's overall agency budget request. For fiscal year 26, we're requesting $266 million, increasing to $269 million in fiscal year 2027. These funds are critical to sustaining statewide public safety services. The request supports a workforce of 1,151 full-time positions and 14 unclassified roles. As a personnel-driven agency, the majority of our budget is dedicated to salaries and benefits. The remaining 41% supports operational needs, including grants distributed to local agencies and other state entities. Pages 5 through 7 focus on the Office of the Commissioner, which serves as the backbone of the department. This office not only provides leadership and oversight across all 7 divisions, but also directly manages 3 critical areas: the Office of Highway Safety, the Legal Unit, and the Bureau of Hearings. Through this centralized oversight, the Office of the Commissioner ensures strategic alignment and operational efficiency across the department. On page 8, we introduce the Division of Administration. This division provides essential internal support services across the department's divisions and is composed of 6 bureaus: financial management, human resources, asset and resource management, road tool, grants management, and facility management. The division's budget request is $13 million for fiscal year 26 and $14 million for fiscal year 27, with approximately 66% allocated to salary and benefits for 84 classified and 3 unclassified employees. In fiscal year 23, the Road Toll Bureau collected $183 million for the Highway Fund. While the Division of Administration is primarily funded through the highway and general funds, a significant portion of its operation is supported through indirect cost recovery of dedicated funds. These recoveries are tied to administrative services provided across the department, such as human resource management, grants administration, and invoice processing. These services are essential to ensuring a smooth, efficient operation in each of its divisions. Moving to page 13, we transition to the Division of Motor Vehicles. The DMV's mission is to enhance public safety on New Hampshire's roads by ensuring all drivers, vehicles, and service providers are properly credentialed. The division includes 6 bureaus: driver licensing, financial responsibility, operations, registration, title, and administration. On page 14, the DMV presents a budget of $34.7 million for 26 and $35.4 million for fiscal year 27. Of the total, 56% is allocated to salary and benefits for 210 classified and 2 unclassified employees. The DMV is primarily funded through cost of collections. It receives smaller amounts from dedicated sources like the Plate Fund, Motorcycle Rider Training Fund, and Driver Education Fund. Pages 16 through 18 focus on the Division of State Police, whose core mission is to ensure public safety on our highways and at critical locations throughout the state. The division's budget request is $122 million for fiscal year 26 and $120.8 million for fiscal year 27, with 72% allocated to salary and benefits for 571 classified and 1 unclassified position. The state police is funded through a mix of general funds, highway funds, turnpike revenues, and federal grants, such as the Community-Oriented Police Services COPS program. These funds support initiatives like hiring, training, and school security. Addressing personnel vacancy remains a top priority. Budget adjustments for this division includes $2.7 million increase to support contracts and body camera implementation, along with $2.1 million to cover overtime related to ongoing staffing gaps. Page 19 introduces the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. This division coordinates New Hampshire's response to both natural and human-made disasters. Page 20, HSCM requests $26.3 million for fiscal year 26 and $26.6 million for fiscal year 27. Of this, 27% is allocated to 42 classified and 2 unclassified employees, with 73% supporting operations primarily funded through FEMA's Homeland Security grant programs. HSCM's funding includes federal and state sources. FEMA's grant support core emergency preparedness and mitigation efforts, while state general funds supplement these capabilities. HSCM also receives funds under RSA 107B subsection 3, which supports emergency response for Seabrook Station Emergency Planning Zone. On page 22, we turn to the Division of Emergency Services and Communication, which manages the enhanced 911 system and statewide radio network. On page 23, outlines the division's budget request of $20.2 million for fiscal year 26 and $20.7 million for fiscal year 27. Approximately 73% is dedicated to salary and benefits for 130 classified and 1 unclassified employee. Funding for this division comes from a dedicated surcharge applied to communication services, which is directly which is directed to the Enhanced 911 System Fund. This fund is used to operate and develop 911 services and the statewide emergency notification system. On page 25, shifts focus to the Division of Fire Standards in Training and Emergency Medical Services. This division is responsible for training, certifying, and supporting emergency responders throughout the state. On page 26, the division request is $11.3 million for fiscal year 26 and $11.6 million for fiscal year 27. 62% is allocated to salary and benefits for 40 classified and 1 unclassified employee. Page 27 highlights key program areas included firefighter and EMS training, curriculum development, and certification services.
Big.
Sorry.
Centerling is
I'm just interrupting you because you go to page 23 on your sheet. We don't have any of the pages after that. In your book that you handed out. So when you talk about everything about fire services and forward, we don't have them.
I will get them for you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let me just tell you what's on the list. Fire safety. When you get them, introduces the Division of Fire Safety, which works to prevent loss in life or property through fire safety education, enforcement, and investigation. And their budget is $7.1 million for fiscal year 26 and $7.2 million for fiscal year 27, with 80% supporting 26 classified and 1 unclassified employee. Both fire standards and training and EMS and fire safety are supported through the Fire Fund. This fund is primarily sustained by fees collected under RSA 260 subsection 14 for motor vehicle records and certificate copies requested by insurers and authorized entities. To maintain service levels to fulfill statutory obligations, a $4 million transfer to the Fire Fund is requested. This appropriation is non-lapsant pursuant to RSA 21-P subsection 12-D and has the support of the Governor and the House. I'd like to now shift your attention to the second document I distributed, and that this outlines the requested action summary. And these are, like I said, these are outstanding items carried over from the House phase for your review and consideration. If you look at the second slide, you'll see a list of these requested actions. Each item notes the related House bill, the type of action, and the impacted division with a brief description of the proposed change. Action items 1 and 2 are related. Action 1 outlines a technical adjustment, and Action 2 presents a corresponding proposed language. This change is intended to align current statutory language with actual practices. One of the key components we're requesting is a transfer of 5 positions and their associated budget appropriations from the Division of Administration to the Division of Motor Vehicles. This proposed change supports operational improvements within the International Fuel Tax Agreement and International Registration Plan programs. By consolidating these functions under DNV, we aim to improve efficiency, streamline internal operations, and enhance the customer service experience. This will allow carriers to complete multiple transactions either in a single visit or online, simplifying compliance and reducing wait times. It's important to note that this transfer has a 0 net impact on the department's budget and will continue to be funded 100% through cost of collections. If you move to item...
We can do a amendment for 1 and 2.
If you move to item 3, the department is opposing the proposed increase in the fee for motor vehicle records request to $20. This fee was just increased in July of 2023, and since then we've already seen a decline in our customer base. Raising it again so soon will likely accelerate that trend. This reduction in volume would have a direct negative impact on the Fire Fund, which relies on its revenue from these transactions. Ultimately, this means the state would need to rely more heavily on general fund dollars to support the Fire Fund, creating an additional financial burden. In short, further increasing this fee risks pricing us out of the market and driving away key customers, which could cost more in the long run than short-term revenue gains. Action item number 4. The Department of Safety supports the continuation of state vehicle inspections because they're a vital tool in promoting public safety across our roadways. Regular inspections help ensure the vehicles meet essential safety standards, such as working brakes, headlights, safe tires. These checks are key to catching mechanical issues early before they lead to accidents, breakdowns, and hazardous conditions on the road. And by keeping unsafe vehicles off the road, inspections protect not only drivers and passengers, but also other motorists, pedestrians, and emergency responders. Maintaining this program directly supports the department's core mission to enhance public safety and reduce risk across New Hampshire's roadways. Action items 5 and 6 highlight the department's efforts to modernize license plate production. We support transferring operational responsibility from the Department of Corrections to the Department of Safety in alignment with the capital budget recently approved by the House Public Works and Highways Committee. This funding will allow us to replace outdated equipment with modern plate blanking line and printer, nearly doubling our current production capacity to 1 million plates annually. These efficiencies will support both regular production and any future plate reissuance using existing staff and resources. We are also requesting legislative support to remove the embossing requirement from statute. This change would enable us to fully leverage modern printing technology without affecting plate quality or readability. Commissioners Quinn and Hanks agree on this transition. Importantly, this initiative will not increase cost. Rather, it will be absorbed by the department's existing operations. Action 7. The Department of Safety is requesting an exemption from the 5% administrative fee assessed on dedicated funds. During the House phase, it was explained that this fee is intended to cover Treasury's administrative oversight on these accounts. However, this does not reflect current practices within the Department of Safety. Our Division of Administration already provides comprehensive management of these dedicated funds. This includes processing invoices, managing contracts and MOUs, overseeing customer subsystems, including inquiries, conducting monthly and quarterly reporting, and performing collections. This internal administrative support is funded through a cost recovery model already built into our structure. As such, applying an additional 5% fee for services that is already provided in the department would result in a duplicative charge on these accounts. If this administrative fee, however, we should proceed. We ask that there are 2 funds that are added to the list of exemptions, and that's the E911 fund and the fire fund. The E911 fund cannot lawfully absorb this cost, as such a charge is prohibited by the FCC. As I mentioned earlier in my remarks, when we sought general funds to support the fire fund, we conducted a thorough review of these expenses and requested only what is necessary to deliver essential services to our communities in accordance with the statutory requirements. Imposing additional expenses or administrative fees would directly reduce our level of services we're able to provide at the local level. Action 8. The Department of Safety is requesting a transfer of funds into Class 50 to support a part-time position focused on subrecipient monitoring and audit compliance. This transfer has 0 net impact on the department's budget, and it will be fully funded by federal funds. This position is essential to ensure we meet requirements of our subrecipient monitoring policy for federal grants, which includes both desk and on-site reviews for subaward activities. To remain compliant with uniform guidance, as well as our own internal policies and procedure, additional support is necessary. Our current staff does not have the capacity to meet these growing demands, and this part-time role will allow us to maintain proper oversight and compliance. Action item 9, Granite Shield. The Department of Safety seeks the continued funding of the Substance Abuse Enforcement Program, commonly known as Granite Shield, through the Opioid Abatement Trust Fund as authorized by RSA 126-A subsection 83. For the biennium ending June 30, 2027, we are requesting that funds from the trust be appropriated to the department to support law enforcement efforts aimed to reducing overdose deaths and opioid-related harms. These funds would specifically cover overtime and related costs for county and local law enforcement agencies that choose to participate in the program. This continued investment allows us to maintain targeted enforcement operations that address the distribution and trafficking of opioids at the local level. Additionally, the Commissioner of Safety would adopt rules under RSA 541A-A to ensure the program is implemented in alignment with the establishment protocols outlined in RSA 21-P subsection 66. This initiative reflects the ongoing commitment to addressing the opioid crisis through coordinated enforcement efforts, community collaboration, and responsible use of the settlement resources. Action 10. The Department of Safety supports the continued investment in the Northern Border Alliance program with a proposed appropriation of $600,000 for fiscal year 2026. This funding would be non-lapsing and dedicated to supporting law enforcement operations along New Hampshire's northern border. Specifically, these funds would be used to support overtime patrols related training activities and purchase the necessary equipment for the state police. In addition, these funds would be used to provide grants to other state, county, and local enforcement agencies to offset overtime costs associated with their participation in Northern Border Alliance operations as authorized under RSA 21-P subsection 69. This program strengthens multi-agency coordination, enhances our ability to detect and deter criminal activity on the border regions, and ensures our law enforcement partners have the resources needed to maintain public safety in these rural and often unstaffed areas. The proposed funding would be drawn from general funds not otherwise appropriated as authorized by the governor. 11, and the last one. The Department of Safety is requesting clarifying language to formally codify the long-standing use of 911 surcharge funds to maintain the state's radio and communication infrastructure. Currently, the Division of Emergency Services and Communication is responsible for operating and maintaining this system. It includes the equipment and technologies that enable critical real-time communication between public safety answering points, emergency communication centers, and first responders. This interoperability is essential for effective emergency response and public safety coordination across the state. The proposed language confirms that, consistent with existing practice, maintenance of the system is an allowable use of 911 surcharge fund established under RSA 106-H subsection 9. This change enhances transparency, aligns with how the system is currently managed, and ensures continued reliability of the infrastructure and public safety agencies rely on every day. During the House phase, this item was introduced late in the process. In executive session, concerns were raised that this practice might not be an appropriate use of these funds. As a result of this, $3 million in general funds were added to this account for system activities estimated to not be related to 911, specifically traffic attributed to state police. However, the radio system is not transactionally based and does not track usage in a way that allows for precise cost allocation. As such, this estimate is not grounded in measurable data. Importantly, federal guidance supports the department's long-standing approach. The FCC 911's fee diversion report and order issued pursuant to congressional directive in 2020 provides clear guidance, and I quote, "Allowable uses of 911 fees should include funding for any communication system, technology, or support activity that directly enables the delivery of voice and data between 911 system entry point and the first responder. This includes land mobile radio systems and other communications infrastructure that support real-time exchange of critical information, end quote. These recommendations were developed by the 911 Strike Force and are intended to ensure current and future technologies that directly support emergency response and are eligible for 911 funding. In short, the department's use of the surcharge funds to support the state's radio system is both operationally necessary and aligned with the national best practices. Formalizing this in statute would provide clarity, and responsible stewardship of public safety resources. And this concludes our action items.
Questions from the senators? Senator Rosenwald, and then Senator Lang.
Thank you. My question has to do with the use of the opioid abatement funds. I don't know if you've seen the letter from the chair of the Opioid Abatement Commission to the governor and the Senate President and the Speaker, but the chair of that commission is Deputy AG Buffetti, who negotiated these settlement funds. He's concerned about a couple things. One, the open-ended use. There's no limit on the appropriation. And the way I see your language is that it could be used to support law enforcement efforts surrounding overdose deaths that are not related to opioids, which would violate the terms of the settlements. And finally, I would just bring up that the legislature doesn't have the statutory authority to appropriate these funds. It's basically the Opioid Abatement Commission. So I hope you'll speak with Deputy A.G. Buffetti.
I'm aware, I haven't read the letter, but he's shared with me those concerns. And my primary concern is keeping this program up and running and getting it, fully funded to keep the law enforcement working out there to make these arrests and take these dangerous drugs, all drugs, off the street, whether it's opioids, methamphetamine, cocaine. So, and they have been doing that. So, but I am aware, Senator.
Follow-up?
So I think we have to restrict it to opioids to maintain the terms of the settlements with the companies that are giving us this money. But also, the commission is looking for a not an open-ended appropriation of funds. And finally, we would need to do some work on a notwithstanding. I'm not sure what, if it's 126 something.
I think Senator Lang's turn.
Thank you. So I have just two questions. Action item number 10, the Northern Border Alliance is for a single fiscal year request of 600,000. Is there money in the budget? And is this an enhancement request, or is this money not in the budget that we're looking for, and why don't we have it for the second year?
Thank you for the question, Amy. Give me a second.
Assuming the answer to the second question is because it's a non-lapsing fund, any money you have left will just flow into the second budget year. and
Well, she's looking, Senator. We have currently just over $500,000. I checked this morning what's in the account today. So approximately $523,000 as of today.
So that funding is to align with the governor's executive summary. It was an oversight that it wasn't put in the budget, and 600,000 will meet the demands.
Thank you. Second question.
Additional questions?
Thank you. Item number 11, which is the communications using the surcharge to pay for the fund for the radio system. You mentioned there was $3 million of a general fund appropriation. Does that now come out and is replaced by 911 funds?
That would be your decision. General funds have never supported that system before.
I'm sure Senator Gray is going to jump for joy when he hears he has $3 million more.
I'm waiting for Ways and Means to give me some estimates.
2 more weeks. 2 to 3 more weeks, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I brought this up 2 years ago, but in House Bill 2 this year, the judicial branch has been given authorization to charge a fee to the customer for using a credit card. Is that something that you guys would now consider doing at DMV as cities and towns do, and lots of places around if you don't pay cash? Even our cafeteria downstairs, when you use a card, you get hit with a fee. Is that something DMV would consider to offset maybe the highway funds?
Are you asking me, will we consider it today, or have we considered it or discussed
Would
it?
you consider it
I think,
for this budget?
well, I think we'd consider anything if it's a policy decision. I think we'd, have to look at it and look at what, what the revenue might be, or Amy, do you want to?
I think that one is probably a good one for them to go think about the question, ask you for additional information, and then get back to you, Senator.
I think
We'll look into that.
that would be great. Thank you.
Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the, I know there's a lot of discussion around item 4 on the state inspections, but just one particular question. As I recall that bill from the House, that essentially it would place the duties of doing inspections on state police if they stop somebody on the road.
Exactly, there'd be no inspection, so it would be pretty much a self-inspection.
But if I may follow up, it did seem to me that part of the provision there was that if you made a stop, then you would have to, there would have to be an inspection conducted at that point to see if they were in violation of any kind of, any mechanical issues, like brakes or whatever.
Right, and I think that would be impossible on roadside to do.
No.
So, I mean, I wasn't privileged to all the conversations, but I think if somebody was stopped and the state trooper saw that their tires weren't safe, or if there were a crash, then they would have to, obviously tow the vehicle and do an inspection after the case.
Thank you.
Certainly that bill is in a committee in the Senate, and we'll let them do the groundwork. Senator Lang.
Nope, I just want to tell Mickey, if you want to write up an amendment for 10 and 11, you can put it in my name.
Additional questions? Seeing none? Our last group.
Thank you, Senators.
I'm only 40 minutes behind, right? That's why you didn't get a break.
I was worried about a 6 o'clock meeting.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is John Skippa, and I'm the Director of New Hampshire Police Standards and Training. With me today is the Assistant Director and our Business Manager, Max Schultz. The mission of New Hampshire Police Standards and Training is to shape, strengthen, and sustain the competency and professionalism of New Hampshire law enforcement in service to our state. The Police Standards and Training Council regulates the the hiring, educational, and certification standards for all police, state corrections, and probation parole officers in New Hampshire. We operate the New Hampshire Police Academy, which all municipal police, county sheriff deputies, state troopers, conservation officers, liquor investigators, and other full-time law enforcement officers must attend to become certified as a full-time police officer in this state. We also operate the basic part-time academy that all part-time police officers must complete to obtain part-time police certification, as well as the New Hampshire Corrections Academy that all state corrections officers attend in order to obtain corrections officer certification. We also provide specialized advanced and in-service refresher training at our facility in Concord and regionally around the state to assist officers in completing the annual requirements to maintain their certification. As part of our responsibility for regulating over 4,000 certified officers in our state, we convene and rule on disciplinary hearings, that may suspend or revoke the certification of officers that have violated council rules or committed a crime or an act of moral turpitude. We are an independent executive branch agency governed by a 17-member Police Standards and Training Council. We are not affiliated with any law enforcement or prosecutorial agency, thereby avoiding potential conflicts of interest with our regulatory function and decertification duties. We provide services with 28 full-time and 11 part-time positions, which include sworn staff, administrative, and maintenance employees. Our staff is assisted by adjunct instructors, most of whom are unpaid volunteers, and a small number of contracted instructors. We operate a 77,000 square foot training facility located on 20.87 acres of grounds across from NHTI, Concord's Community College. With regard to the Governor and House approved budget request, the Department of Administrative Services provided Police Standards and Training with target allocations from the Governor's Office of $6,368,138 in FY26 and the same target allocation for FY27. Our submitted efficiency budget request met those requirements. Our FY24 actual spend was $5,294,370. Our adjusted authorized budget for FY25 is currently $6,805,527. Our FY26 Governor and House approved request of $6,364,508 represents a 0.94% decrease below the FY25 adjusted authorized budget, which is a $441,019 reduction in our operating budget. Our FY27 request of $6,363,988 represents a 0% increase from FY26 as requested. With regard to new programs, it's important to note that the Police Standards and Training Council has taken on a number of new responsibilities in the last budget cycle. These new programs resulted in the increase from FY24 spend and FY25 adjusted authorized budget. These new responsibilities are the result of the 2022 legislation through administrative rule changes based on recommendations made by the Governor's Law Enforcement Accountability, Community, and Transparency Commission, and through realignment of responsibilities between state agencies. SB 376-FN 2022 session assigned Police Standards and Training Council with providing crisis intervention training to New Hampshire law enforcement officers with the target of having at least one officer from every law enforcement agency in the state trained. Executive Order 2022-06 assigned Police Standards and Training Council with the responsibility of overseeing the statewide accreditation program for law enforcement agencies. This program is funded by DOJ grants and a very small general fund operating budget. HB 1682-FN-A 2022 session established the Law Enforcement Conduct Review Committee under Police Standards and Training. This committee is responsible for overseeing and reviewing all investigations regarding allegations of police misconduct as defined in the statute. Through Executive Order 2022-19, Administrative Rule POL 403.01 has been amended to increase the number of annual in-service training hours for all certified law enforcement officers as a condition of continued certification from 8 hours annually, increasing incrementally to 24 hours of annual training by 2025. Requested change passed by the New Hampshire House of Representatives. Police Standards and Training Council has been working with the DOIT to fill an urgent need for an IT Manager 2 position within our agency. We currently share an IT manager with many other agencies, and Fiscal and GNC have approved the transfer of funding to support this position through the end of the current biennium. Police Standards and Training Council currently has a vacant full-time administrative position that we would request to defund for the next biennium and use the salary and benefits from that position, as well as other funds in our efficiency budget, request to continue to fund the IT Manager 2 position. There would be no increase to our Governor and House-approved budget request, simply an adjustment of the current funding lines. Police Standards and Training Council request and the House approve the following changes to our Governor's recommended budget request. Unfund position number 18241 and move funds to support DOIT position number 14294, IT Manager 2. The total cost for this position in FY26 is $105,058.25, and FY27, $110,234.48. In conclusion, our proposed FY 26-27 budget reflects compliance with target allocations set forth by the Governor's office while attempting to appropriately resource our current obligations of providing contemporary recruit training to newly hired officers, creating and delivering in-service training, regulating and monitoring compliance with professional standards, as well as preparing to meet the new obligations as outlined above. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We certainly stand ready to answer any questions. And with regard to our discussion on Friday, Senator Gray, after meeting with my staff, I think it's also important to know that we are going to forego the purchase of that simulation training equipment at this time. And we would respectfully request that we be allowed to add that amount of money into the operating budget that's being proposed today as well.
Thank you. Questions from the senators?
More of a comment than a question, but I'm interested in knowing whether Police Standards and Training has worked with Plymouth State College on their new 3-year law enforcement program that they're doing for a bachelor's degree.
Thank you for that question. I personally am not up to speed on that program. Ironically, I was able to talk with one of the police officers from Plymouth State University this morning. We had our fitness training or fitness testing for the incoming class. They had somebody in the ranks, so I did talk with them, but did not get a chance to talk about that program.
Hello? So I'd ask, I'm a graduate of the California Academy as well as New Hampshire's Academy as well. And I know in California, they have a very tight relationship with the university system. So your police academy time, both part-time or full-time, goes towards your college degree. And I'd ask you to reach out to President Bricks up at Plymouth and see if he can integrate that. I'd love to see it where college students who are specializing in law enforcement, getting a bachelor's degree, can spend their summer going to the part-time academy and help fill out some of our holes in our job as part of their graduate program. So I'd ask that you maybe consider reaching out to him.
I definitely will, Senator. Thank you.
All right. Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
For the rest of you, there was a list provided by Grant that identified things that were in other bills, but in House Bill 2. I'm going to go talk to the Senate President tomorrow during the leadership because I want those actually sent to the policy committees with a recommendation of what to do with the bill and House Bill 2. So either take one out or not take the other out. But that should be based on their whether or not they need further work, in the bill, because certainly we don't have time to modify what is in House Bill 2. But in a lot of cases, there are retained bills over in the House that would do that. So again, that's a little different than what we've done before, but I don't think I've seen as many House additions to House Bill 2 as we got this time. And it's just, we need the policy committee's help to identify what to do with those. All right? So I will be talking with her tomorrow, and we'll give you feedback when we get it. All right, with that, our business of the day being complete, we are adjourned.